Internal voices. Ch1, barista by day, mage by night. I striped out of my loose-fitting gray sweatpants and white t-shirt. Glancing towards a black digital clock on my nightstand, I remembered that I had to be at work in 30 minutes. Looking in my bathroom mirror, I pulled my hair back into a ponytail. My pale skin was almost the same color as my blonde hair. I really should get out more, I thought to myself as I splashed cold water on my face. The fierce green of my eyes flashed in the mirror's reflection as I brushed my teeth. I ran a comb through my beard to make it look halfway presentable. For some reason, I saw it as fashionable for my beard to compete against my hair to see which would grow longer. I threw on my work clothes, a black button-up and slacks, as I grabbed my keys and wallet off the dresser. I took a swig of a beer that sat upon the dresser before running out the door. The beer had been warm, but I didn't care. I should have cared, but I didn't. I walked down the old decrepit stairwell and passed by some guys sitting on the corner passing cigarettes and whatever else back and forth. They waved and shouted, "Hey Carl! Come kick it, man. I can't right now, I have work. See you guys later. We got whiskey, man, just have a sip." "I can't, I told you I have to go to work." "Yeah, whatever." After fending off the neighborhood addicts, I opened the door of my black Honda and revved the engine into life. I drove a newer model that was completely electric. It wasn't the prettiest car ever, but it was dependable. One couldn't ask for more than that. Well, I suppose you could, but I didn't. I had paid $900 for it at a local police auction, even though it was well worth triple that amount. It had once been the caravan for a bank-robbing troublemaker of some sort, or at least I assumed so, being that the auction consisted of cars seized by the district attorney's office. Another man's arrest was my lucky day. I roamed through the city streets mumbling their names as I passed by. Maple Street, Jones Avenue, Parkland Road. A smirk was on my lips as I jokingly announced the street names. I was alone and free to be as goofy as I would like. A lot of people do embarrassing things when they are alone, or at least I hoped I wasn't the only one. My work was only a 5-minute drive from my apartment. It was unfashionably called The Spot. It was a hipster-style coffee shop that was located just a short drive from campus. Naturally, most of the people in the lobby were only there for the free Wi-Fi. A $5 latte was well worth the hours of fast and free internet capability. I let myself in through the back door that rested in the alleyway behind the coffee shop. Cigarette butts lay on the ground right outside the back door. I wondered why no one had put one of those cigarette buckets full of sand out there. I then thought about doing it myself, but quickly lost interest as the door shut behind me. I put my apron on, turned my phone on silent, and went to clock in. It was 4:57 p.m. as I punched in my clock-in code. No sooner than I had arrived was Daniel, the store manager, asking me to take over for Ryan. He was really tired and about to go home. Ryan was a terrible worker, but he was charming. People skills seem to get people further than their actual work capacities. The store manager almost always seems to be the most neurotic person on the whole staff. Daniel was no exception to this rule. Her face was filled with lines of stress and her aneurysms were always nervous and tense. For some reason, my heart always ached when I looked at her. Towards the end of my shift, covered in coffee and cream, I smiled at Daniel as I began to try and spark a conversation. "Are you excited for your vacation next week? What are you going to do?" "I am going to Hawaii on a 6-day cruise." "I'm not that excited. The whole time all I will do is worry about how you guys are doing here without me." "Oh, we'll do just fine. You shouldn't worry about us. Just have some fun." "Yeah, I'm sure. This place would collapse without me here to guide it." "You're definitely right about that." Daniel then ran off to check on some customers as I stood there watching her customer service smile. Despite her nervous tendencies, Daniel was a beautiful woman. Her hair was jet black and fell just past her shoulders, it was always straightened. She always wore dark-shaded lipstick, never the bright red stuff. Her nails were always bitten and chewed in an inconsistent manner. Her eyes were a sparkling shade of blue and her eyelashes were curled up with mascara. By all cultural standards, she was a real catch, but I didn't want any part of it. We all had on our black button-ups and black aprons with slacks and non-slick shoes on. It was much more conservative than some store uniforms, which pleased me. Wearing a tie-dye shirt with the store's logo on it terrified me. Bad taste is so common nowadays. Besides Daniel and me, Lexi was running about dealing with the drive-thru. I manned the front cashier and she manned the drive-thru headset and window. Lexi had light brown colored hair that curled each and every direction. She put gel in it to try and straighten it out, but this was not very successful. Her eyes were brown. And she was half Hispanic, resulting in a perfect year-round tan. Her facial features were petite and delicate and she talked like a skater. You know, the whole, "what's up my dude," kind of thing. She had tattoos on her wrists of honeysuckle flowers and vines. She was a great person to work with, very kind and fun, and never scared to be herself. I, on the other hand, am always scared to be myself. I mean such simple things like, "Hey Carl, what did you do last night?" throw me into fits of confusion. What if I am honest? If I lie then I am just a liar and that never feels good. If I told the truth it would come out like, well, it was pretty good. I played on my laptop for a while, ate some dinner, and put my robe on. Then I called on the mercurial prince of the heptarchial mystery, you know from Enochian. We had a good talk before I banished him and went about my evening. Can you imagine what someone would say? Would they even believe me? I am not sure. Oh yeah, I practice ritual magic. It must have slipped my mind to tell you when I was telling you all about my good lucks, only kidding. It's like one of the greatest obsessions of my life. Standing there within the magic circle with wand in hand and the incense smoke in the air is just exhilarating. I vibrate the god names, call the invocations, draw the sigils, and put in the work. And, yes it works, just not in the way most people think it will. It is the mystery tradition of the West. Just as the yogis of India sit on the ground and achieve enlightenment, we in the West bellow magical words and invoke the gods within our magic circles to achieve the same objective. Now, back to the coffee shop. Lexi was talking about her mother's constant desire to intrude on her personal life. She had a boyfriend named Luis, a good guy for the most part. She was complaining about the way in which her mother would ask her things about Luis like, why is he so self-conscious about his looks that he needs to buy such expensive clothes? Who in their right mind would spend $1,200 on a pair of shoes? As far as Lexi was concerned, it was none of her mother's business how much money he spent on shoes. I had already mentally checked out of the conversation, but Lexi did not notice. My replies were short and universal, but she didn't skip a beat. Most people just want to dump their troubles on you. They just want it off of their shoulders. They want someone to listen and I was fine with being that person, as long as I was on the clock. Once the clock hit 9:30, I was out of there. The back door swung shut behind me with a thud as I threw my jacket over my shoulders. I took a series of deep breaths as I calmed myself down from working. My shift was finally over and it was time to go home. I stared at the cigarette butts on the ground. They were everywhere. In the front of the coffee shop, where people could see, we put out little buckets full of sand. It wasn't the classiest looking thing, but it was better than the back door. Something about all of the cigarettes on the ground brought a strange feeling over me, a strange focus. I used to smoke cigarettes and one day I just stopped. I'm not sure what happened, but I was glad for it now. I clicked my key fob as my door unlocked and I jumped inside. I revved the engine into life and put her into gear. I was soon at home amongst my books, junk food, and quiet solitude. I thought about watching a movie, but decided against it. It was time to do some magic. Tonight was to be a night of Enochian mystery. In solemn fashion, I put on my white robe and mumbled the words. I now robe and endue myself with these vestments of power by virtue of the most holy name of God Adonai, who livest and reignest unto the ages of ages. Amen. The word that is in italicized capital letters is not just spoken, but vibrated. It's sort of like an opera singer doing soprano but much easier. You vibrate each letter out fully and do it with a lot of force with the whole God name being sounded at one pitch, Adonai. Monks chanting Aum is the closest example of this. It is a skill that comes with practice. Once you get it down, it is intoxicating. And so, most of the words beyond this point are vibrated in a continuous string of ecstatic prayer. After bellowing the words of the angelic invocation, I sat down before the shoe stone. I took one glance at the sigil of Nogahel, beside the stone, before being propelled into a vision of power. My body goes slightly rigid as my breathing slows. I close my eyes and see a glowing orb of green light. It pulses like a heartbeat. It beats as it grows in size. The green sphere of light shoots upward and my gaze follows until it disappears. I look back forward to see a fierce being with a sword pointed at me. It is Nogahel. I gaze at the sword. It is covered in flowers and vines, honeysuckle and a pink flower of some sort cover the sharp blade. The hilt is entirely covered with vines, so that you cannot see the metal beneath. I bow and Nogahel sheaths his sword. The great angel bows to greet me in turn. His skin glows with a yellow light and he is very skinny, his ribs showing. Vines of trees and animal skins are woven together to form a sort of sash that drapes over his left shoulder. He has a leopard skin covering for his waist. His hair is a light brown color and falls to his shoulders in colors. The facial features are slightly androgynous, but the male shines through a tad stronger. His eyes are brown and very fierce. He motions with his hand for me to have a look around. We are in a forest of very thick, old trees. These trees seem to stretch on forever and the bark is white from old age. Vines hang in every direction. They are very thick and sturdy. He grabs a hold and uses them to swing around. I follow as we swing through the forest of ancient white trees. He speaks with a joyous laughter as we swing through the air. These old trees are just ideas. Each one can stretch all the way up to heaven while its root extend to hell. The vines serve as the means of transport from one tree to another. The vine of devotion, motivation you call it, is beautiful and full of joy. Do not fear joy or worry that it will be short-lived. Simply swing, from one idea to the next, from heaven to hell, and see that each and every old white tree is the same. It is that which lies in between the ideas that is joy. Do not cling to one tree, but see them all for what they are and swing. And so it was, Nogahel and I swung through the air together for a while. Our laughter and joy filled the air and the old white trees seemed to come alive. The bark of their bodies grew facial features, eyes and a mouth. They all began to sing in a deep guttural-sounding chant. The words of their chant sounded like English sometimes and foreign at other moments. There was a strange quality to their songs. As soon as I caught a word I would forget it as the next word caught my attention before it was soon forgotten too. Oh, how strange was their song! This continued for a few seconds until Nogahel drew his sword, put his lips to it, and gave a big sta. All was quiet and we suddenly weren't swinging in the vines anymore. The forest had grown dark and cold. Nogahel's eyes flashed red and a large black dragon flew overhead and screeched as Nogahel made a gesture to be quiet. All joy seemed to have dried up and terror boiled in my blood. The dragon soon passed and the forest came back to color and life. Nogahel's eyes turned back to brown and a smile returned to his lips. He put his arm around me and whispered. We almost got caught by the terrible evil dragon named Because. I awoke from my vision to my candle-lit bedroom. I proceeded to banish and blew out the candles, disrobed, and put some things away. I wrote down the results of the invocation in my journal, mentally said farewell to Nogahel, and sat down at my computer to browse through the web. It was time to relax a little. It had been a long day. Ch2, the United Republic of America. I have not been totally honest with you. My name is Carl Maxell, and I wrote this novel in the year of 2053. Several years later and after much editing, I had a whole series of these novels ready for publication. My question then wasn't to how or where to publish it but when. Before the time travel experiments of 2074 were banned, I managed to slip a series of novels into the past. This is the first novel in that series. These novels landed on a particular publisher's desk, in the year of 2019, with a letter. I have inserted a copy of this letter, with the man's name omitted, on the following page. This particular publisher was specifically chosen by technical methods. Once in the future, it is not too difficult to predict the past. If someone has the idea to alter the past, waves of subtle changes can be detected by those trained in the art. The same cannot be said about projecting to the future from the past. Dear ____________. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Inside of this packet is a collection of novels. Within the pages of these novels, you will find a story, my story. It is written in prose form and slightly sensationalized for the reader's enjoyment. Whether or not what is said is true, is of no accord. I care not if you believe the things that I say. Truth does not require your approval to be true. I freely relinquish all legal rights and ownership of these novels over to you. Change the name of the author to your own or choose a pen name, I care not. All that I ask is that you publish these novels and get them to the general public. Take all of the profits and credit yourself with the accomplishment, if you like. Without you, these words would never reach the reader. Your mission is of great import and I entrust you with every ounce of my confidence. In the act of publishing these novels, you are performing a great service to humanity. Love is the law, love under will. Sincerely yours, Carl Maxell. I do not drive a simple electricity-powered vehicle. God forbid such a lowly way to travel. The model year of my Honda Leap Star is 2047 and it is a hovercraft, propelled by anti-gravity technologies. This type of engine was patented in 2029 by the Technosophy Corporation, before being sold to the Honda Corporation for a hefty sum of $12 million. It took almost 6 years for the technology to be fully integrated and made affordable for the consumer. In the year of 2035, the first consumer affordable Honda model was released with the hovercraft engine. And so, the overhead highways were constructed and regulated as we rose from the street to the sky. All of the other automobile manufacturers were soon groveling at Honda's feet for approval to use their hovercraft technology. An agreement was reached and Honda was to receive 5% of the profits for every vehicle produced with hovercraft engine technology. And so, Honda was made a business giant of immense proportions. Within a few years, no one drove electric-powered cars but the red class. All gasoline cars or vehicles of any kind were scraped for metal by order of the government. Everyone orange class or above was given their first hovercraft automobile at a big discount. I was of the orange class, but hoped to be of the yellow class one day, maybe even the black class if the stars were so aligned. The year is 2050 and I am a member of the orange class. This means that I carry an orange card, a government ID card with an orange seal upon it. The residents of the United Republic of America are subdivided into classes. The red class is the lowest class, usually consisting of immigrants and criminals. The red class was designed to make up the manual labor working class. It is a polite way of creating a slave class, like blue-collar workers of the past. They aren't even given discounts on hovercrafts, so most of them drive electricity-powered cars. After many years of toil and sweat, a red may buy his way into the orange class, but it is very expensive. Due to the hefty sum required to move up to orange status, most reds are criminals. They try to make fast money to make their way out of the class nightmare they were born into. You can't blame them really. What would you do if you were born a red? After the red class, comes the orange class. This is the class that I currently belong to. As I said before, orange class and above are given huge discounts on hovercrafts, up to 50% with financing available. Having a hovercraft is crucial in the world, it marks you as a member of society. The orange class is made up of the workers of customer service and office jobs. Basically anything that doesn't require much physical labor or leadership skills can be listed in this category. All jobs are broken into categories that pair up with the color caste system. By being in orange, I can only work as a waiter or clerk or secretary or similar vocations. Many call this color the in-between color due to its similarity to the red, without the hard hours and labor, but having perks like the green class. The green class comes next. Greens work in the leadership positions over the oranges. Daniel, the manager at the coffee shop, is a green. They get a slightly larger discount on hovercrafts from the oranges and make a little more money. There is not much difference in the oranges and the greens, besides age and salary. Greens are just oranges that have worked a specified amount of hours as oranges. Once this threshold is reached, 8,000 hours, the orange is passed to green. Unless you go to college or do something magical, there is no way out of being a green. The yellow class is made up of individuals with college degrees or training of some sort in a certain field. They fit certain niches and perform skills that are more specialized than the oranges. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, school teachers, professors, and the like make up the yellow class. You can usually know a yellow by their dress. They wear blazers and khakis with bow ties and make at least double the money a green does. The long tie went out of style in the mid-2030s and has not returned as a fad. I like bow ties more anyway, being much more comfortable. Beyond the yellow class is strange territory. The black class comes next and it is of the highest honor to make such a grade. There are no formal requirements to be a black. You could be a red and be upgraded to a black, although it didn't happen very often. Blacks were the leaders of their fields, visionaries, celebrities, and heroes. Blacks stood out in all aspects of life as people of great repute. It was considered rude to speak to a black before they spoke to you first. They wore all black suits with no ties and shiny black leather shoes. Anyone caught wearing a black suit without a black ID card could be thrown in prison. You could make someone do some ridiculous things by just wearing a black suit. A black card and suit was of the highest honor. There is a further class that I still am not sure is just of rumor or not. It is called the purple class and supposedly is made up of the finest of the black class. In an annual meeting, the purples meet to elect new members to the black class. I have never seen a purple class being that there is no way to distinguish them. The purple ID card in their wallet granted them almost any and every power and privilege imaginable, so they dress how they liked. There was no way to tell a purple unless they told you themselves. They are kind of like secret agents. I had never met such a person and I'm not sure if they are even real. Most superheroes and heroes in the novels of my time are purples. They are beings of legend. In the past, the country I lived in was called the United States of America. It being divided into 50 states, it was divided in authority. There was a great visionary as president named Grant Agape. He saw things totally different than any other president of the United States had. He revealed the idiocy of the drug wars and ended all prohibitions. All drugs being legal, there was not much need for state governments. I mean, everyone agreed that we needed police to serve and protect and that laws of finances and business, zoning, traffic, etc. were needed. Agape passed a bill to each and every state of the country's representatives proposing the states all abolish their boundaries and merge into one country without boundaries. It was the most beautiful moment. I can still hear the rally cries. Let our country unite as one republic. The motions were passed unanimously and all state legislature was replaced with federal legislature in specified zones. Countrywide legislation was established and the cops were sent to protect and serve. The states were erased from the map and the country was divided into zones based on climate. Town names remained in place for convenience. Many professional sport teams had to alter their logos, but it was well worth the trouble. We had evolved to a world of freedom of choice and liberty. I was proud to live in such a place. I am proud to be a citizen of the United Republic of America. As it is said, let freedom ring and liberty sing. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the scheme. Now, back to the story of my joyous struggle as an orange. Ch3, hovercraft. I awoke to the terrible sound of my alarm going off. In a sporadic fashion, I lurched forward and slammed my hand down on the alarm to give myself a few more minutes of serenity. My serenity was once more interrupted as I decided to rouse myself from bed. I jumped up and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I grabbed a pair of underwear from my closet and ran off to take a shower. The warm water brought me to life. I wasn't much of a morning person. This much was obvious, it being 9 a.m. when I finally decided to get up and about. My job at the coffee shop was a part-time gig. It wasn't out of laziness that I didn't work that much, but a matter of priority. Ceremonial magic and meditation were the most important things in my life, the great work it's called. I had paid my dues, worked very hard in a red-class job, and saved some cash before heading to college. I was doing things very different than most, but I will be a yellow one day, I just know it. It was a very big day for me. I was going to buy my first hovercraft. Most people my age, 24, already have a hovercraft. I was really excited. I know that it's all just a status thing, but hovercrafts are so cool. I had arranged to meet a guy from the internet who would buy my electric car. As one would guess, he was a red. He paid the amount I was asking though, leaving me with no room to complain. He had pulled up in a very old model electric car wearing blue jeans and a mechanic shirt. He looked over the car, mumbled a few things, took it around the block, and handed me the money. There wasn't even a negotiation. It worked out just perfect. With my $3,600 in hand, I walked a few blocks to catch the bus. It was a rainy day outside, gloomy and slightly colder than it had been lately. The date was June 14th of 2051. It could have been blazing hot, so I was grateful for the rain. I had put on my slick black-colored rain jacket with jeans and boots. My butt got wet on the bus seat, but I didn't mind. Today was such an exciting day. The bus pulled up and the large S900 hovercraft engine roared like a small windstorm. The public buses, police cars, fire trucks, and government vehicles were all made by a company named Thrust Corporation. People called them thrusters. The bus hovered about 3 feet from the city street and a small ladder popped out that made you not have to jump to get in. They even had an electric ramp that slid out of the back door if anyone needed wheelchair accessibility. Even public transportation was cooler than my car. Good thing I finally got rid of that thing. I thought as I shook with excitement and took a seat beside an elderly woman with an angry look on her face. I thought about asking her how her day was, but I could pretty much tell it wasn't that great. She smelled like a sweaty tortilla chip and I began to mindlessly play on the internet on my phone. Nona was rambling on in distress over the fact that we hadn't seen each other in 3 days. I always told her, if we were together every day we would get tired of each other. This just didn't resonate well with her. The ways of the woman are strange and unknown, at least to me. Nona and I had been together for the last year. We lived separately and that was fine by me. Commitment sounded like a lot to deal with and marriage is just a financial contract, such a profane concept. Once more, Nona did not share my views on these concepts. We may not have many philosophical viewpoints in common, but we did have a strong attraction. It was just like a spark passed between us when we were together. It was incredible. Something about love is magical. If anyone ever tells you they don't believe in magic, then bring up love. Everyone has a magical story that has to do with love, the most magical force in the universe. My thoughts drifted to daydreams and fantasies of my dear Nona. If that old woman beside me knew what was going through my mind, she would be appalled, or turned on. Such thoughts made me smirk with silent laughter. In my mind's eye, I could see Nona's light brown hair that fell just past her shoulders. I could see her green eyes sparkling and the light pink lipstick she always wore. I could even see the obnoxious crystal that hung from her neck, a quartz attached to a rope necklace by a piece of wire. She was my Nona, all mine. My thoughts had almost distracted from my goal, almost. I looked up just in time to catch my bus stop. We had made it to the intersection of Berry Street and Porter Avenue, the place where I would find my new hovercraft. I got off the bus and ran across the road, without even going through the pedestrian crossing. After dodging a few angry commuters, I had made it to the next stage of attainment in my young life. I had made it to Galaxy Motors Used Cars and this was about to be the greatest day of my entire life, or so I thought. I really should have had higher expectations back then. Life had such bigger things in store for me than a simple hovercraft. Hovercraft dealerships were a pretty cool sight. Hovercrafts convert gravity into a propulsion system, therefore, you can leave them running all the time. Not only can you leave it running indefinitely, but you can set the idle hover height to any height under 50 yards, per the law. The hovercrafts were in rows of 12 across and 12 high. From the top hovercraft, dangled a fold-up ladder that the sales associate would climb to get the hovercraft you liked down for you. There was a blue G450 and even a green R700. Oh my God, I was falling apart at the seams with delight. Which hovercraft would be mine? Which of them would be going home with me today? I jumped up and down with joy as a salesman flocked to me before I had even walked 5 foot past the property line. He wore a blue blazer with khaki pants and had a military haircut. He had a big smile on his face as he delivered his pitch. Whatever you need, we got it. If it hovers, you'll find it here. My name is Ronnie. Is there a particular model you'd like me to get down for you? Yeah, that GR500 over there, the white one. Good choice. Ronnie proceeded to climb a sketchy ladder to the very top hovercraft in the third closest row to us. To be honest, I picked the white GR500 because it was at the very top. He was about to get a big pile of my money. The least he could do was work for it by climbing that high. I have been told I have a twisted sense of humor. I don't deny it. Neuroses are more common than cavities these days, almost as common as hovercrafts. How on earth was I the only orange that I knew of without a hovercraft? I am such a loser. My inner loser nature would not be diminished, but my hovercraft would conceal such embarrassing facts. Ronnie zipped straight up into the air and zoomed at an arc as he descended to a small takeoff strip to my left. I walked over to the hovercraft as I ran my hand over the aluminum frame that was painted a bright white. This model had traces of magnesium bound to the aluminum, which made it stronger than normal aluminum. It also reached a speed of 192 miles per hour in the short span of 5 seconds. It had the kind of seatbelt that was in 2 halves that connected over the chest, like a race car. Ronnie blocked my entry as he asked, "Can I see your ID card first?" "Sorry, it's just company policy." I know you're not a red, but we have to ask for ID. Yeah, sure. He looked at my ID, nodded his head, and handed it back to me. With a big grin on my face, I jumped into the driver's seat of the hovercraft. It was then that a great revelation flashed through my mind. I had never driven a hovercraft before. Oh well, the best way is to learn is in the spur of the moment. I saw a lever at my right on the floor that went from if, idle float, to FF, forward float, to RF, reverse float. I threw the gear into FF and held on for dear life as I put the pedal to the floor. The GR500 took off with such a roar that I felt like I was riding a thundercloud. I pulled back and down on the steering wheel, like old airplanes, and soared up into the overheads, highways in the sky. I put on my blinker and merged with the zooming traffic in the skies. My whole life I had watched as others zoomed by in their hovercrafts. Today I was up there, up here, in the sky with them. Today I had become a man. I followed behind the other cars and got the hang of the speed everyone was going. It was much faster than I had anticipated. After about 5 minutes, I returned to the dealership and slammed the GR500 into idle float. Ronnie smiled and asked me how it went, but I could tell that my driving had made him nervous. We walked inside the building and worked out a deal. I gave him $2,000 down and drove away in my hovercraft. I was quite happy in my new hovercraft. I revved the engine of my new GR500 as I took off towards the overheads. The overheads were a new experience for me. Only a handful of times, always as a passenger, had I zoomed through the sky highway. Hundreds of other hovercrafts were zooming this way and that. Tracers, little balls of orange light, hovered in the air to serve as lane markers. To say that I was overwhelmed is an understatement. I was terrified. My ears pounded to the rhythm of my heartbeat. Sweat was making my palms stick to the steering wheel and my breathing became erratic. In panic, I reached down and flipped the radio on. After dialing it to 93 FM, the sounds of thrust music reverberated through the speakers. Thrust music is a fusion of distorted, drop D tuning, guitar swells added to melodic dubstep. It was very pleasing and the singing was always kept to a minimum. In thrust, it's all about the deep swells and the melody. A good thrust song feels like a drunken inspiration, an idea forming out of chaos. The car had nice speakers, almost too nice. The car shook in rhythm with the bass and the beat began to deliver me from my terror. As my breathing calmed I began to get my bearings. Fellow drivers were squished in behind me, honking their horns, and waving their arms at me. One by one, I was being passed by people as they shouted obscenities at me. I gave it some more gas as I finally hit 160 miles per hour, the average going speed of the overheads. And so, I had become a real part of society. I had taken my place in the overheads. Once I reached my destination, marked by a GPS indicator on my dash, I pressed the descend button. My stomach had that weird feeling as I zoomed straight down towards the ground. I landed in an open parking spot predetermined by the GPS. I wondered if the GPSs were ever wrong, but quickly pushed this worry aside. I turned off the ignition to my hovercraft and threw the rollop-up ladder out of my open door. After climbing down the ladder, my feet hit solid ground. I had made it to the China hut and it was time to get something to eat. I had an Enochian meeting tonight and I needed some fuel. I tore into some noodles and chicken and threw back a water. The young Chinese woman behind the counter was very nice and her smile brought me some cheer. Even though we didn't speak the same language, we could strike a connection. Where did this connection spring from? The soul. Such kinds of thoughts always race through my mind. I am what would be considered an occultist, through and through. If it's a secret, or hidden from the public, then I want in. Not much was hidden from the public nowadays though because of the internet. It was the public that hid itself away from the truth, not the other way around. I wiped the spare bits of rice on my dark blue jeans and threw my tray of food away. I waved goodbye to the nice lady behind the counter and ran out the door. I clicked a button on my key fob as the roll-up ladder was extended back down to me. When you locked your hovercraft, the ladder would roll itself back up to discourage theft. I was slightly scared of heights, but I swallowed my fear as I climbed towards my GR500. I couldn't let other people see that I was such a greenhorn at this hovercraft stuff. I was an orange after all and I needed to start acting like it. I clicked my baby into gear as the engine roared into life. Well, it wasn't as much of a roar as a zooming sound. I was still thinking of it like my Honda, but it was so much cooler than that. Beeping sounds echoed in unison throughout the cab as I put in the coordinates of my destination. It was time to get to my Enochian meeting already. I was head of the exploratory department of the Enochian Society for a Better Tomorrow. In my department, we explored separate forms of consciousness and the beings that exist therein. Ghosts, angels, demons, spirits, and jinns are based around the same phenomenon, discarnate intelligences. My job was the contact and study of these beings by use of the Enochian system of ceremonial magic. It wasn't really a job, but more of a pleasure. As human beings, we have been mostly ignorant to the impact that discarnate intelligences have had on our lives. Almost every religion has stories about them and the things that they have said. It is my mission, and the mission of my department, to contact these discarnate beings and see what it is that they have to say. So far, they have had quite a lot to say, like a whole lot. Who knew that angels and spirits were so talkative? Oh yeah, I work from home. I just have to go up to the office to report my findings and pick up new assignments. I do this a few days out of the week and it takes about an hour each visit. My work in the exploratory department of the Enochian Society for a Better Tomorrow is top secret, hence the need for my coffee shop job as a cover. I get paid for my Enochian work, but it's top secret, like a CIA job or something. I live a double life, coffee barista by day and Enochian detective by night. Ch4, Outside the Lines. It was a Tuesday evening, like all the rest. Being ridden of the burden to make coffee for people, I was going to attempt some magic. There was still a full month left of summer break before I returned to college. My strivings to become a yellow were focused into the world of academia. Essays, papers, notes, and class participation were the elements that made up the stuff to become a yellow, to leave behind the tattered burnt reminiscences of loserhood. If I was striving to become somebody, then what was I now? Nobody. After a small lunch at Chickalopolis, a fried chicken serving hole in the wall, I returned to my apartment. Nona wanted to come over later. I missed her. A smile touched my lips as I thought to our last date, at a tacky Italian restaurant called Rosaria's. Our date was followed by hefty amounts of whiskey, joyful lust, affectionate love, and friendship. Great relationships are between people that would be best friends otherwise, or so my grandpa always said. When I thought about her I could smell her. All troubles and pain are lost in the union of two entities, in the alchemical vessel of sexual ecstasy. My Nona, my fellow loser, and my love spurs motivation within me. Great women serve as the inspiration for great men, and vice versa. She was coming over in 3 hours. I had better hurry up with my magic. I flung the door open to reveal something that should have been obvious. My apartment needed some cleaning. Books lay in 3-foot-high stacks all over the room, like little towers of knowledge and folly. My gray cat, Gregor, was walking back and forth while rubbing himself against my legs. My white robe hung on a hook on the far side of the room. I dodged the piles of books and threw the robe on as I began to recite my words of power. I now robe and endue myself with these vestments of power by virtue of the most holy name of God Adonai, who livest and reignest unto the ages of ages. Amen. I referred to a few reference books, and drew out the sigil of my target as best that I could. A sigil is a symbolic representation of a discarnate intelligence, it the signature of an angel. I had been given orders to investigate the entity known as the Oth, a very powerful planetary force belonging to the sphere of Mars. In magic, reference to the 7 planets of the ancients are given not in their physical sense but in a sort of metaphoric and symbolic code. These 7 planets pair up with the Sephiroth upon the tree of life of the Holy Kabbalah and constitute numerous correspondences and tendencies. Reference and study to the previous will shed light. Being of the sphere of Mars, the Oth was fierce, strong, and full of courage. His color would be red and the incense dragon's blood. The day was Tuesday, already planned accordingly before. After ruffling through the drawers of my dresser, I pulled out some dragon's blood incense sticks. I lit the end of it as the stout smell filled my nostrils and smoke began to fill the air. I placed the incense and a holder for it, on top of the altar. My altar was shaped like a double cube draped in red silk. A wax-carved sigillum de Ameth secretly resided beneath the red silk, behind the veil. On top of the red silk, rested the holy table, an array of Enochian letters and mysteries. On top of the holy table, rested a smaller square tablet called the Tablet of Union. 2 candles were placed on either side of a crystal ball, called the Shoe Stone, being placed upon a small table in the west opposite the altar. The sigil of the oath was placed beneath the shoe stone. The system of magic I use is referred to as Enochian, and it makes use of an angelic language. Hence, the actual conjuration sounds like babbling in an unknown language, because that's exactly what it is. Such things sound strange at first encounter, but what's even stranger is that it works. It really works. Upon my neck hangs the layman, a microcosmic symbol of the macrocosmic holy table. On my right ring finger is a pure gold signet ring bearing the divine name Pele. In my hand is an almond wand bearing the divine name Adonai. After flipping off the lights and lighting candles, I splash some holy oil upon my forehead and kneel at the altar in prayer. The incense smoke hangs in the air and dances in the candlelight. I perform the regular banishings and preliminary invocations. All of the worries of life fall away as I bellowed the words. Adagita vav pa'ahe zodanuganu fa salata. Vi vav el. Sabame il paragi izodazodazid piatapihi kasarima abramagi ta talabo parakalita qo dolores lqo turabiza uj balato. Jui kahisa lusada orari od michaelapape kahisa bia ozodanuganu. Lapno anu tarof karisa tage oquo maninu iadon. Terezadu. Gohel, zodakare eca no quota. Zodamaranu Michaela Zodo od ozadazadame voriler, lape zoder ioiad. It is in the name of love and will, in the name of the one God of three natures, and in the name of EHNB, do I evoke thee the oath. I evoke thee the oath. Being roused into a state of mystical excitement, I sat down before the shoe stone in the west. I sat upon a small cushion and relaxed my mind. After a few seconds of concentration, came the vision of the oath. A swirling red ball of flame spins in black empty space. I hear a roar and see a hand holding sword, a left hand. Then I see, in the right hand, a lance with the Mars sigil upon it. A god with flowing golden hair and a golden crown embezzled with rubies stands before me. He is smiling wide and very confident. He stands with one foot upon the red sphere of flame and the other upon the black nothing. His body is muscular and hairy and his eyes are full of terrifying strength. He takes the red sphere of flame in his hand, it shrinks. He swallows the sphere and spits it back up. It's no longer red and made of flame, but blue and solid. He hands it to me as I look at it. He is smirking at my perplexity. That which is above fire, descends as water. Feminine power, in human life, is the strongest and most active force known, but you call it passive. This is the ignorance of the reflective falsity of general human knowledge. What you call truth is usually folly. The most holy and sincere pursuits are sneered at and condemned. You humans and your nonsense, lack of sense, no sense of what is. Look at the sphere from all points. The sphere in my hand suddenly burst into flame once more. I jumped back being taken off guard. Look harder. I followed Theatha's instructions as the ball turned back into solid blue. After a few realizations, I could make it be half red flame and half solid blue. The two are inseparable, opposites are not opposites but complements. The two, and the realization of their union is the trinity of philosophy. Analyze well this mental strategy and use it. Whenever the truth or the folly grabs hold of thy sense, remember this lesson of the three. By taking into account the threefold nature, we find the inherent oneness. He beats his chest with the lance and raises his sword up high. The oath vibrates a divine name and it seems to ring on for minutes. I-O. He bows to me and says, "That is all. Goodbye, young warrior, young magician." I return his bow and tell him farewell. After banishings, I dispose of his sigil and tidy my temple back together. I jumped out of my robe and threw myself into some clothes. Nona was on her way and I was excited to see her. My love showed up just in time as I was getting quite bored. Women seem to have the phenomenal ability of increasing a man's patience by straining it to its limits. She burst through the door, having her own set of keys, and we embraced in a hug. Her lips were soon intertwined with my own as we twirled about my living room. There it was again, that smell. I just loved how she smelled. Is that weird? After some animalistic moments of ecstasy, we recovered our sanity. We prettied ourselves up and planned to go out on the town. It was then that I noticed something was different about her, cosmetically speaking. "When did you add that green streak to your hair?" "Yesterday, I was bored." "Do you like it?" "Yeah, it looks good." "You're just saying that because I'm your girlfriend. Would you rather me say it looks like shit?" No, really though, it looks good. She merely rolled her eyes as she began to ask where it was that I was taking her to eat. I told her it was going to be a surprise. This wasn't a complete lie, seeing that I hadn't decided yet. It would be a surprise for both of us. I ran off to the bathroom and looked up a nearby steakhouse called Braxton's. Good enough for me, I decided, and memorized the address. I grabbed Nona by the waist and rushed her out the door. Down the stairs we descended towards my GR 500. I clicked the button on my key fob as the ladder was spit out from a compartment beneath the door. Nona's mouth hung wide open as she yelled, "My boyfriend finally has a hovercraft. No longer will I have to drive him around in mine. I'm so proud of you, babe. That's a nice one too. It's 2 years newer than mine." "Yeah, I'm still not used to driving up there. I would have you sign a disclaimer before you got in, but you gave consent to craziness the moment you became my girlfriend." "Yeah, that's no lie. Maybe I should have dated a normal boy, instead of an eccentric like you." She nudged my shoulder playfully as I pulled her close. We made out in the parking lot. Like a teenaged couple, we were enjoying our PDA. It was fun to be occasionally irresponsible. She went up the ladder first as I followed right behind. After we got settled into the hovercraft, I punched in the coordinates for Braxton's as we zoomed into the overheads. Ugh, I was still terrified of driving my hovercraft. I was trying my hardest, but Nona still found my struggles quite amusing. She reached over and punched in a string of numbers on the GPS. To my surprise, the hovercraft began to drive itself. I let go of the wheel in amazement. I just had no idea that they could do that. Only the newer models have that feature. Most people are embarrassed to use it, but my safety is more valuable than your masculine pride. I wasn't sure if I should thank her or not, after her comments. Nona can be so confusing sometimes, but she was my lady and I was okay with occasional confusion. After 10 minutes of sky travel, we had made it to Braxton's. The front doors were wooden and heavy and the staff wore tan button-ups with jeans. With a lack of taster, they all wore the sparkling customer service smile known to the orange class. Ugh, I couldn't wait to be a yellow already. I requested a booth in the back corner away from the bar. The waitress obviously didn't like my request, but granted it nonetheless. I let Nona walk in front of me, not being a gentleman, but so I could get a good look at her. Yeah, the look was good, really good. She wore a black dress that came just above her knees. She had on leather lace-up boots and black pantyhose. The dress didn't have any sleeves and she had a black choker necklace on. I was no longer interested in a ribeye. My mouth watered at the sight of my true entree, my Nona. I was soon taken out of my lustful reveries by our waiter asking what we wanted to drink. I got a water and Nona got some sort of gin cocktail. She was smirking up at me as I came back to my senses. It's like she could read my mind. She knew exactly what I was thinking about. She bit her finger and looked up at me as she spoke. "You look really good tonight." "So do you. That dress looks really good. You're making it hard for me to concentrate on my dinner." "I could say the same about you." We both blushed as I held her hands across the table. True, we were childish and young, but that was what made it so much fun. Nona finished off about 4 of the little gin cocktails as her cheeks turned red and she began to laugh more and more often. I volunteered to drive home, so I stuck to coffee and water. We had shared a large Caesar salad before our meal that had fried chicken in it. After the salad, came my ribeye cooked medium and Nona's bacon cheeseburger. I take her to a fancy restaurant and all she gets is a cheeseburger, really? After dinner we returned to the apartment. Nona still lived at home with her parents, so she liked to get drunk about half the nights she stayed with me. Having her own key delighted her beyond belief. She was a little frustrated that I would not let her move in though. I told her that I needed a room specifically for ritual, no exceptions. This meant we would have to get another place with 3 bedrooms. She just didn't get it. She understood ritual was important to me, but thought me to be a little extreme. We went to bed together then. Lying next to my Nona made me happy. I enjoyed the nights we spent together. It was already 2 a.m. when I finally decided that we had better get to sleep. We had planned to go to bed earlier, but this was delayed by our intimacies. I set my alarm for 7 a.m., as we had a ritual planned for the morning. She had agreed to start participating with me. What better way for her to understand my ritual than to try it out for herself? Was she ready for such things? I wasn't sure. Nona moaned with annoyance in her tone as I shook her awake. The alarm had failed to wake her. I was blaming the alcohol, but she really was a terrible morning person. I wasn't much better actually. The night lends itself so much better to my sensibilities. Going to the kitchen, I put on a pot of coffee, strong coffee. The caffeine would rouse her from her alcohol-induced sluggishness. After about 30 minutes worth of procrastination, we showered together in a ceremonial fashion. This might seem to have a ritualistic purpose, as it should, but we just enjoyed the excuse to bath each other. I added the ceremonial salt, blessed the water, and chanted the divine names as I splashed buckets of water over Nona's body. Nona followed suit for me, and we then scrubbed all the physical filth from each other that symbolized mental and emotional and spiritual cleansing. It's sort of like a heretical baptism, but much more effective. After being washed clean, physically and metaphysically, we said a series of prayers and got into our ceremonial robes. Both of our robes were white, symbolic of the purity of the soul. Even in a holy vestment, Nona looked sexy. Sorry, I get distracted sometimes. I readied the temple, placing the sigil of Corabeel under the shoe stone in the west. Corabeel was the mercurial angel of the Sigillum Dei Ameth. I placed a small cushion before the shoe stone and told Nona to take a seat. She would be acting as seer and I the magus. I stood before the altar, with my wand in hand, as I proceeded to banish. Nona looked nervous, but she would do just fine. The angelic words of evocation flowed from my lips in a rhythmic, intoxicating manner. Before long, the spell had been uttered and Corabeel was duly evoked. I stood with pen and paper to record what Nona saw in a journal. She began to fall into trance as she told me what she saw. Before me is a large orange being, in an orange robe with black trim. His skin is bright orange and he has a long beak like one of those fishing birds, an egret. Now, he jumps into the air and a pair of wings takes him into the air. He flies into the sun and a bright orange light flashes through the sky. After a few seconds, he returns with a head of a man instead of an egret this time. In his hand is a caduceus and on his head is a crown with a serpent on it. His skin is very tan and his complexion is like that of an Egyptian. He motions with his hand for me to look around. We are in Egypt amongst the pyramids. Orange sand bakes in the sun around us and it is quiet and peaceful. We are alone. He shakes his head no, and begins to speak. We are not alone. There are many that reside here, but each and every one is nobody. Leaving behind the personality, they reside here, in the city of the pyramids. A part of you resides here, or rather, a higher possibility of you lies in waiting for you here. The perfected voice of the Logos is reaching out towards your other, your lover. Something is reaching out to Carl, what it is we say not. Name it not, overthink not, just listen and act accordingly. This voice reaches forth from the city of the pyramids. Trust it and watch miracles become commonplace. The world has great plans for you, for both of you. Wait for the voice, for it is coming. A large windstorm sweeps through the landscape. All turns into rainbow and fluorescent colors. The sand is in my eyes, I cannot see. When I open my eyes, we are no longer in the city of the pyramids. We are floating down a river, on a small boat. Crocodiles are swimming around the boat and snapping their jaws. It is terrifying, but Corabeel doesn't seem to be the least disturbed. He dips his caduceus into the water as a golden shrill echoes through the water. The water calms and the crocodiles disappear beneath the water. We paddle through the river and it is dark, very dark. A lantern hangs on a pole at the front of the boat to light the way. A light is approaching from ahead. This light turns into a being before me. I see a hawk-headed god holding a spear on the left and a being surrounded by a purple egg holding a lotus on the right. They turn into two lights that twirl together as I hear strange words shouted into the air, that reverberate and echo. Are hoer quit. Harpocrates. Haruare ha. At the sounding of the word Haruare ha, I awoke from my vision. I am back in the room with you. Carl, you weren't kidding. This magic stuff really works. Yes, I know. Now stay there until I finish banishing. Will you hurry? Yes, of course. After the banishings, we embraced in a hug. We had done it. Our first ritual together had been a success and it was all recorded in my journal. Ch5, Synchronicities. It had been a few weeks since Nona's first magic ceremony. She was immediately hooked on the process. I almost wished we had never done it. All she ever did was ask me about how to do it on her own. My job as boyfriend was morphed into magical mentor. After a week or two, the excitement had worn off and something incredible had occurred. Nona had become a practicing magician. We were a super magic couple of transcendental proportions, in my opinion anyway. Once again, I sat in meditation. My hands rested on my knees and my back was straight. Most people prefer to sit on the ground, but I like sitting on a chair. The Hindus and occultists, like me, call this asana the god posture. I like it because my back is straight, my legs don't fall asleep so easily. Oh thank God, my timer finally has gone off. The 40 minutes was up and most of my daily meditation was over. I was getting slightly antsy and ready to get something to eat. After chugging a glass of water, I rushed out the door towards my GR500. Impatiently, I waited for the ladder to extend to the ground. To be frankly honest, I liked my electric car better. This flying car business is just too much, too showy. I typed in the coordinates of a local deli. The coordinates were strange, catching my attention. 9393, Eastern Drive. Business number 93. Zone 93. What the hell does 93 mean? After a few seconds of contemplation, I shrugged it off as a coincidence and returned my attention back to my hunger. Ugh, I'm starving. The hovercraft zoomed off into the overheads as my stomach began to churn. Per Nona's advice, I have resigned to letting my hovercraft drive on its own. My ego had retreated enough for me to realize that I was putting people in danger with my skydriving. Who am I kidding? Even on the ground, I am a terrible driver. I kind of liked it driving for me. It allowed me to enjoy the radio more fully. My hovercraft pulled to a stop as I turned the engine off. The hovercraft engine made a loud whining noise when accelerating, but otherwise were barely louder than a microwave. You would think the faster things got they would get louder, but it seems to be the opposite is true. After arriving at cold and quick sandwiches, I turned off my hovercraft as the radio music shut off. I climbed out of my hovercraft as my feet hit the concrete. My tattered gym shoes made a thud as I jumped from the ladder a bit too early. The restaurant was small and quaint, very functional. The tables were all stainless steel, easy to wipe down. The chairs weren't even normal chairs but small stools with black leather tops like a diner's. The tiles were yellow with red trim, a strange choice. Weird pictures of every category of phenomenon hung on the walls. The place conveyed a sense of polite chaos, tacky but pleasant. I walked up to the counter to order a turkey sandwich on rye. On the side, I got some potato chips and a water. The guy behind the counter had bright orange hair, combed over and a sarcastic look on his face. When I handed my cash to the guy, I noticed something weird, like really weird. He had the number 93 tattooed on his wrist in bold cartoon letters. I asked him what it meant, but he just gave me a weird look and remained silent. He handed me my change and a table marker as I walked away in confusion. Why wouldn't he tell me what it meant? I was beginning to get slightly agitated over his silence. After a few minutes of wrestling with the thought of facing the guy about his tattoo, my food arrived. A pretty young girl with brown hair and nervous aneurysm set my tray down as she said, "There you go, sir. Can I get you anything else?" Well, I just have a question. What does that guy's tattoo mean? The 93 on his wrist, the one with bright orange hair. Sir, nobody who works here has orange hair. You must have confused him with someone else. I was dumbstricken by her words as my heart began to pound. I nodded as she gave me a weird look before leaving me alone. What was going on? What did 93 mean? Was someone playing a joke on me? I know I saw that guy just a minute ago, at least I think I did. Ugh, the irony of the coincidence was confounding. I turned to my sandwich for comfort. I wished Nona was with me. None of my magic or meditation prepared me for these kinds of things, only served as a build-up for them. Ugh, whatever. I moaned quietly to myself as I pushed the thoughts from my mind. I guess I would treat these occurrences like cities and just take it in stride. I thought back to my psychology classes where these things were called synchronicities by the psychologist Carl Jung. My professor always said his ideas were fringe, but they made a lot of sense at the moment. What did fringe mean anyway? Weren't all accepted lines of thought fringe when they started out? Human beings are scared of evolution, of that which lies dormant waiting to flower. My paranoid philosophizing was cut short by my phone going off. I always had my phone on vibrate as I hate to be bothered against my will. Even on vibrate, it agitated me. I hit the accept button as Nona's voice filled my ears. "Hey, babe, how is your day so far?" Just as weird as they usually are. What about you? Yeah, weird sums it up actually for me too. Are you free tonight, around 7 o'clock? Yeah, I guess so. I don't work until tomorrow morning. Will you go to my Nyasha meeting with me? I did magic with you, so I want you to see what I do spiritually. Nona, I've been to a lot of those meetings. You know this, it's not like I'm not into it or see the point. I just did it so many times I kind of got all I can get out of it. I bet I went to over 50 meetings my freshman year of college, Nona. But yes, I will go with you. Great, I will pick you up at 6:30. Sounds good, see you then. I hung up before she could say those dreaded words I love you. It's just worn on me over my dating career. Every couple says it, so it's not special. I just think that those words have lost their spell, turning into the mush of black magicians casting spells of fornication and one-night stands. Modern-day dating is the realization of human relations, it's all temporary. People can pretend that love lasts forever, but novelty is the spice of life. If only all relations on Earth were open, then much trouble would be transcended. Nona and I had an open relationship, wide open. I had agreed to go with Nona out of boyfriend obligation. Nyasha meetings were a lot to handle. There is no doubt that they are incredibly effective, but I had wearied of such things. No matter how many of the meetings I have gone to, it still caused a nervous anticipation with me to stir. It's one thing to do ritual or meditation and achieve light and incremental results, but Nyasha meetings deliver on demand in much stronger ways than usually desired. No one goes to the temple with their knees knocking in fear because they know it is so life-changing. Psychedelic drugs are another story entirely. Their sincerity cannot be questioned. Only those who have not taken them, or not taken sufficient doses, can doubt. As Terence McKenna once said, "Take a sufficient dose and hold on, Hannah." That pretty much nails the psychedelic methodology to spiritual attainment. Psychedelic drugs are taken, in large doses, by everyone present at these meetings. Once you took a dose, you were not allowed to leave for an 8-hour period. One medically trained professional, and a shaman, were the only people in the room who weren't usually loaded. I was once an avid partaker of such mysteries a few years back. Once you have seen the face of God 30 times, even such a thing as that loses its shimmer. I was still nervous though, the experience is so intense. Ugh, the things we do for love, I guess. I was soon thrown into fits of rage upon returning to my hovercraft. A red flag was attached to my windshield, which meant only one thing. I had got a damn ticket. I just didn't understand. How can a policeman give me a ticket for parking in the sky? I mean, how the hell do you know where you can and can't park? I have asked Nona about this, but even to her it seemed a mystery. At least we had gotten over the silly drug war, but cops still found ways to annoy me. After climbing up to the cab of my hovercraft, I pulled the flag from my windshield in disgust. At its base was a small slit where you pulled your ticket out from. I pulled my ticket out and set in on my passenger seat. I pressed the button on the side of the flag and threw it into the air as its propellers emerged, and it zoomed back to the police department with its photo and time of me acknowledging my ticket. From the moment you activated the ticket drones, you have about 30 days to pay the ticket. I unrolled the piece of paper that told me how much more money the government would receive from me this month and almost fell over with disbelief. This is what the tiny piece of paper said. The United Republic of America. Overhead Regulations and Liability Reduction. Zone 2197, Subzone B.1. Violation of Article 374, Subsection A, Line 2 of the Overhead Codes of Hover Conduct and Liability Management. Parking in regulated airspace, without proper permits. Fine amount, $93. Due within 30 days of acknowledgement of ticket drone. Issued and authorized by Officer Terry Daniels of Police Station D of Zone 2197. On this date of July 11, 2050, at approximately 1:35 p.m. Ticket hashtag W01000000093939393939393939. Nona rapped her knuckled upon the door as I was taken out of my reading. I threw my book on the floor to join the piles of books already present and yelled for her to wait a second. I ran to the kitchen, chugged a glass of water, grabbed my coat and wallet, and opened up the door. She almost tackled me as I had my jack halfway on with one arm angled in a goofy manner. Her tongue entered my mouth and we spun together for several seconds before I said, You know, most people say hello, or it's great to see you before they do that. You and I are not most people. Yeah, that's for sure. Our faces were barely an inch apart as we looked into each other's eyes before returning to tongue wrestling. After getting me completely riled up, Nona suddenly looked to her phone and realized that we should hurry. This should have been obvious from the beginning, but such are the distractions of love. We ran out the door, to her hovercraft that had been running the whole time. I climbed up as she shut the door, slammed it into gear, and charged into the overheads. Yeah, Nona was a way better driver than I was, like way better. Ch6, another Nyasha meeting. Nona was quite excited and for good reason. Nyasha meetings had become a sort of popular religion across the country. Christianity and Judaism had been tossed out with fossil fuels and genocide as generally bad ideas. Buddhism had become pretty popular, with American twists. Ceremonial magic, scientific illuminism, and Nyasha meetings were, for the most part, the average religions of the upper class. A few Mohammedans, Protestants, and Hindus could be found in America, but their numbers were dwindling outside of their mother countries. I was definitely of the ceremonial magic side of things, and Nona was a Nyasha connoisseur. We parked our hovercraft above a very large townhouse. It was white with yellow trim and large pillars that supported the shade for the large concrete porch. People were hanging out outside and lights were flashing from the inside, like a rave. Nyasha meetings were unique to other religious places of worship. They didn't need expensive temples, idols, or preachers and prophets. The experience itself was enough, and it was universally accessible. It didn't matter if you were Einstein, or someone with disabilities, psychedelics would cause you to have a profound experience beyond the boundaries of what you thought was previously possible. I never knew what to wear to these things. No one made it clear on the dress code, because there was no such thing. I wore jeans and a button-up, while Nona had on a green summer dress and her boots. She wore dark lipstick and wore her silver Nyasha silver. The pendant was made up of 3 triangles interlaced with the words Nyasha positioned in various points. 3 in 1, 1 in 3 is what it stood for. This was borrowed from scientific illuminism. Many of the religions nowadays are intermingled and borrow from each other. They definitely have more in common than they have apart. We went inside to find people hanging around and smoking the sacred tobacco. A certain kind of tobacco was used in these meetings for some reason or another that I never understood. Nona partook of the holy cigarettes as I just hung back and watched. We talked to a few old friends and socialized for about 10 minutes. Then a flute could be heard playing in the other room. Everyone instantly became quiet and everyone rushed into the house from outside. The doors were locked and the lights were dimmed. A woman in a black hooded robe soon emerged from the back room with 2 candles in her outstretched hands. She walked in rhythm to the melody of the flute, each step seeming important. Everyone formed into a single file line and waited for her. One by one, she would whisper in the ear of the next person in line, who would then go into the room in the back. A black cloth hung over the doorway of this back room and you had to push it aside to enter. People called it piercing the veil. She gave about a 10-second pause in between each person, adding to the suspense. Nona went first, due to her excitement, and I followed. Imaginary butterflies were roaming through my stomach, causing my anxiety to boil up. I had been to so many of these things, but I still found myself nervous. I swallowed my fear as the woman in the robe put her lips to my ear and whispered, "Pass through the veil, chosen one. Whisper the password to the shaman inside. It is 93. My eyes widened in shock as I stood staring at her. She impatiently motioned with her hands for me to go on. I pushed the veil aside and entered a candle-lit room. 3 older individuals sat in the shape of a triangle in the far end of the room. The one on the right, an older man, was playing the flute. The one on the left, an older woman, was singing or chanting rather. The one in the center had their hood up, concealing their identity. Another door was positioned behind them with another veil. Nona was on her knees before the 3 of them. The hooded figure handed a small wooden bowl full of brown liquid to Nona. She nodded in thanks and downed the bowl before bowing to them and running through the door in the back. I knelt before the 3 of them as my heart rate was pounding in my ears. I leaned forward and whispered, 93. The 3 of them exchanged glances as the hooded figure removed his hood and looked me in the yes. He reached behind him, to the shelf of bowls, and retrieved a much different-looking bowl than the rest. It was in a porcelain bowl about 3 times the size of Nona's, and instead of being brown it was a dark red and a heavier volume. The figure pulled back its hood, revealing the face of a beautiful woman with bright blonde hair tied up in a bun. She smiled wide and offered me the bowl as she said, "A special ride is in store for you tonight. 93, my brother." I nodded nervously and downed the terrible concoction. She put her hood back on and grabbed another wooden bowl for the next person as she hid my bowl away. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I just went with it. I nervously got up and walked through the back door to find Nona waiting on me. She grabbed me by the hand, kissed me firmly on the lips, and took me around the large room we found ourselves in. It was kind of weird how big the room was. It was the size of like 6 bedrooms all converted into open space. Small cushion and pillows and blankets were scattered about the room in various places. Buckets to puke in were stacked in the corner and 2 large bathrooms were in the far corners. There were 2 water fountains in the room and a little stage in the center for the flute player and singer. After several minutes, my stomach had begun to knot up. This was just part of the process, and I took my attention away from the nausea. Nona and I had taken a seat on some cushions and we were holding hands. We watched as people came into the room. After about 15 minutes, the drink began to slightly kick in. I felt slightly drunk and disoriented, but not fully loaded yet. It was obvious that Nona was in the same boat, due to the goofy grin on her face. We began to kiss again and we didn't stop for a long time. Time stopped and everything fell away as our tongues danced together and we melted into the experience. When we finally pulled apart from each other, the room looked different. Instead of tan carpet and white walls, everyone had a purple-bluish tint to it and waves of energy were surging through the air. When I moved my hand in the air, it looked like I had 5 sets of hands, tracers they call it. The medicine was beginning to work. When I and Nona were joined at the mouth, the 3 guides had taken their place on the stage in the center. The stage was in the shape of a triangle. The woman had taken hood off and Nona was looking at her. She was very attractive and it seemed Nona shared my point of view in the matter. Bright pulses of yellow light seemed to pulse around the center triangle like a force field. The woman on the left had begun to sing and the flute was playing soft melodies. Streams of gyrating shapes and the faces of spirits began to accumulate all about the room. The spirits were moving about in rhythm to the music. My body seemed to be glued to the ground. It's not that I couldn't move, but I just didn't want to. This effect seemed to be universal. I looked around the room to see only people waiting for the bathroom standing up. Everyone else was sprawled on the floor. A large spirit began to materialize in front of me and Nona jumped backwards as a result. I grabbed her hand and told her that it was okay. The spirit waited patiently before speaking. "Would you, most excellent sir, and his lady like to enter the inner triangle? An invitation has been extended from the blonde woman up there. Do you accept?" "Yes, we do." Before Nona could object, I grabbed her hand and we walked up to the center stage. The blonde woman motioned for us to join her as she removed her hood. We sat down in front of her as she smiled at us. The rest of the room seemed to disappear when we entered the triangle. All I could see was yellow light when I tried to look outside of it. The woman grabbed my right hand and Nona's left as she looked back and forth between us. She had a large grin on her face as she said, "Are the 2 of you ready? Ready for what? The greatest night of your life." "Most definitely." Nona was given a similar porcelain bowl that I had been given on account of her association with the Chosen, as the blonde woman put it. Nona drank her magic potion, her second helping, I might add. She did not mind at all. Nyasha meetings were her thing. Never had she been invited into the triangle though, not until tonight. The blonde woman had a very penetrating quality to her eyes, her shimmering green eyes. She seemed to see right through a person, all the way down to the bone. She instructed us to follow our breaths and lay down as the medicine took effect. I don't know what she was talking about, mine had more than enough effect already. My surroundings had transformed into a myriad upon myriads of eyes that opened and closed periodically. I felt a very strong presence in the room, like I was surrounded by something vast. Little did I know that it was just the beginning of my trip. The last normal thing I remember was the blonde woman drinking a cup of her own and laying down in between Nona and me. I thought this to be rather presumptuous, but felt her grab hold of my hand as my judgment fell away. She held Nona's hand as well. There we lay on the ground, within the grip of a beautiful hooded stranger, under the influence of extremely high doses of some mysterious red potion. The floor fell out from beneath my feet and I was suspended in a vast open space. And so, the pillars of reality were rent asunder as the potion began to really kick in. I looked over to see that Nona and the blonde woman had their eyes closed. Everything else had disappeared and was replaced by a dome-like structure made up of the faces of hundreds of spirits. These spirits jumped up and down and chattered in strange languages. It was then that I noticed that I had sat up, but my body was still on the floor. Oh Lord, I was having an out-of-body experience. Amen, not this again. I shot up above the scene. Down below, was my body along with Nona's and the mysterious woman. I looked around and saw that Nona's body of light was hovering beside me. She looked to be in equal shock, as I tried to embrace her. The entirety of my vision filled with bright light and the sensations of 1,000 simultaneous orgasms flashed through my being as we embraced. We both stared at each other as this phenomenon sent us into levels of high excitement. We spiraled together and rose into the air as the top of the dome structure opened up and we passed into a tunnel. This tunnel was made up of strange geometric patterns and machine-like structures that whistled, chimed, and revolved like one great engine of cosmic something. It was beyond the boundaries of language. Words do not exist that describe what we were seeing. We soon burst through this tunnel and found ourselves in a vast open blackness. It was kind of like what I imagine outer space to be like. Another ball of light zoomed by us. We soon realized it was the blonde woman as the ball morphed into her face and she made an expression that indicated us to follow her. Side by side, Nona and I zoomed after our guide. We traveled for some time through the blackness. I couldn't really tell if we were getting anywhere or not, because of the lack of phenomenon around us. It was just Nona, the mystery lady, and I zooming through black empty space in our bodies of light. A tiny purple sphere began to form in the direction of our travel. As we went, the sphere grew in size until it took up almost the entirety of my vision. It was then that I noticed that it wasn't an object, but a being. The large purple sphere was a giant shield that rested in the hand of a kingly spirit. His hair was long and curled at his shoulders, his eyes were like black holes, and his body was made of stars. He opened his mouth and fire issued out from it. The Great Spirit reached into his pocket and grabbed something. He then made a throwing motion as 3 marbles flew from his hands. These spheres of glass suspended in the air between us and the spirit. The mystery lady floated over to her sphere and jumped in it like it was a vehicle. Nona and I followed suit. Once inside of the sphere, I realized it had a control panel but in an alien language. I was utterly confused. What was I supposed to do if I couldn't read it? This problem dissolved away as the angelic characters turned into English. I saw the word ignition and pressed the button. My sphere revved into life and I pushed down on a pedal by my foot. Before I knew it, we were flying at incredible speeds in our spheres. Next, we flew to a world of orange flames and gases. After some thought, I realized it was Mercury. A being in a white robe holding a caduceus greeted us. He had a white flowing beard and he handed us each a golden pen. I was slightly confused as he motioned for me to put it to use. I wrote the word IADA upon the black sky as the words blazed with a yellow light. Everyone stopped what they were doing and a strong intensity came over the experience. The bearded being looked as if he was terrified and the whole reality began to shake to what sounded like enormous footsteps that approached. Something was coming, something huge and terrifying. A large terrifying lion appeared before us. It roared as a bright yellow light shimmered about its body. It had red shimmering eyes and its mane flowed as if a wind blew. Its teeth glistened and veins stuck out from its large muscles. This great creature issued forth 7 great roars as the whole of reality shook in terror. A large luminous ball of light began to shine from behind the lion. It was the sun. Heat and light filled the space and the energy was jacked up to an ecstatic level. All of a sudden the energy dropped and the light vanished. A giant serpent appeared with slanted green eyes. Its skin was jet black and the scales were larger than our sphere vehicles. The snakes made 3.5 revolutions around us and forced our spheres to mash together. I thought the spheres were going to burst as everything went dark. The serpent constricted around us as I prepared to die. This was it. It was all over now. A bright yellow light broke the darkness and the lion reappeared with a courageous roar. It attacked the serpent as the serpent wrapped itself around the lion's body. They were at a standstill. The serpent was wrapped around the lion's throat and the lion's jaws were latched around the snake's throat, but neither of them backed down. Steaming red liquid began to ooze from the lion as its bones began to crack and break beneath the serpent's grip. Green pools of liquid formed under the serpent's neck as the lion clamped down. Both of the cosmic animals fell limp as a burst of rainbow light emitted from their skirmish. This light pulsed 10 times before blinding me. When my vision returned, I saw something incredible before me. The lion and the serpent had survived, but were joined together. Instead of killing each other, they had been morphed together. The newly made creature before us had the body of a serpent with the head of a lion. It roared loudly as everything shook and trembled. Thousands of small spirits, self-transforming machine elves, began to dance and break out in song around us. A group of these beings carried a large gold and silver crown high above their heads as they shouted, "The deed is done. It is not separate, but one. Not one but none. 3 in 1. They jumped up and down and began to scream in strange languages. Objects began to fly from their mouths as they spoke, and these objects in turn sung other objects into being. It was way too much to handle. They placed the crown upon the head of the lion serpent as it roared louder and louder. A few of these elves approached us and beckoned us out of our spheres. I got out and they began to yell and scream and rave at me. I just didn't understand what on earth was going on. One of the objects they had created looked like a 12-sided figure that morphed into a sphere every 2 seconds, and clicked every 3 seconds while flashing different colors. This machine object thing was making sounds itself that caused smaller versions of itself to appear in the air. This was happening all over the place, and hundreds upon hundreds of these objects were all around with crazed extra-dimensional elves jumping in between. Everything was jacked up to an intense level of excitement, and I thought I was going to explode from the weirdness of it all. The elves all gathered around me and yelled, in unison, "Create it! Speak it! Create it! Speak it! Do it now, whoa! Umbrai aldigap rishonafactagen alpolitopol egapito rapa datalusana oko iata nusalino purina oko." The words had just burst forth from me in a spontaneous manner. I had no idea what they meant, but it was ecstatic, amazing to do. In response to my words, a beautifully engraved gold and silver crown formed before me. The elves grabbed it and placed it on my head as they yelled, "Igalupsipe! Igalupsipe! Igalupsipe!" I then turned to Nona and the mystery woman to tell them how to make their own crowns. They had shocked looks on their faces as I yelled the words, "Igunatsipe arata kialusa ono apiata uragata lasa." They had no idea what I was saying. I mean, neither did I. So, instead of waiting for them to get a clue, I uttered the magic words twice. Umbrai aldigap rishonafactagen alpolitopol egapito rapa datalusana oko iata nusalino purina oko. Umbrai aldigap rishonafactagen alpolitopol egapito rapa datalusana oko iata nusalino purina oko. 2 silver and gold crowns appeared as the elves ran off in delight to crown the new queens. There we all stood in the middle of space, surrounded by trans-dimensional beings, with gold and silver crown on our heads. Don't you see why I was so nervous to go to another Nyasha meeting? It's a lot to deal with. We all morphed back into our human forms and the elves began to disappear. We held hands in the form of a triangle as our feet suddenly hit solid ground. We had returned. There we were, the 3 of us back in the room holding hands. We looked back and forth to each other in excitement and surprise. Nona pounced on me as I felt her tongue enter my mouth as we spun together. The blonde woman looked on patiently as we finished our kiss. Instead of stopping with Nona, I grabbed the mystery woman and pulled her into our kiss as the 3 of us took turns making out with one another. The mystery woman didn't hold back, but completely gave herself to Nona and me. She was a true lady. We soon found our way out of the triangle and the room full of intoxicated friends. We found a vacant room in the front part of the house, locked the door, and lit a few candles. Nona and I proceeded to disrobe our mystery woman as we discovered that she wasn't wearing anything beneath her robe. Surprises such as this make life worth living. Her short trimmed pubic hair stood bare and her breasts were small but perky. Her hair fell past her shoulders and her green eyes shimmered in the candlelight. Our mystery woman spoke for the first time as she said, "My name is Layla. I want to know your names before we do this. It makes it more intimate." I'm Nona. I'm Carl. Are you guys going to take off your clothes or am I the only naked one tonight? Such are the delights of an open relationship. Why on earth would anybody ever close it? CH7, The Voice. Nona and I were quite exhausted after our Nyasha meeting. Layla had demanded a fair share of our energy that wonderful evening. It was 5:15 a.m. of the next morning and I was being summoned by the corporate gods to show up at work on time. At the first sounding of my alarm, Nona arose to shut it off. She instantly fell back asleep. She didn't have work until tomorrow. I was not so lucky. I jumped in the shower trying to rub some life back into my bones. After cleansing, I crammed myself into my slacks and black button-up. Ironically, I made some coffee before heading to my job at the coffee shop. Not sure what it is, but coffee brewed at home is just better. I shouldn't let the customers in on such a grand arcanum. After my cup of coffee, I felt ready to do anything. The hallucinogens of the night before did not leave me hungover but rather energized and enthused. I ran out the door of my apartment and slid down the railing of the staircase. Miraculously, I made it without falling. Childish are my antics when happiness is in my heart. Nona made me so happy. I climbed the ladder up to my baby, my GR500 as the warm breeze felt good on my skin. Once inside, I revved the engine into life and punched in the coordinates of my work. The hovercraft zoomed into the overheads and raced the other vehicles to my work. It was kind of amazing how well the hovercraft drove itself. It had a setting that made it stay 20 yards from any other craft. I'm not sure how it worked, but it definitely did. A woman's voice began to speak as I jumped back in alarm. Rely on yourself alone. Do not look to other or outside. I turned the radio volume down to realize that the radio wasn't even on. Where had the voice come from then? Do not be afraid. I am here to guide you to your rightful place. I will keep you safe, my chosen. Okay, I had quite enough at this point. Are you real or just in my head? Both, of course. What? I am real and I am a voice in your head. It can be both, instead of one or the other. I am a real voice in your head. The voice began to laugh as I began to panic. What was going on? Didn't you hear me before? Don't panic, it's all right. What are you? I am beyond words, beyond apprehension. I am. Okay, well you didn't really answer my question. Trust me and I will prove that which I say is true. I don't seem to have much of a choice. Correct. Remember these words, good morning, my strong hero. Okay. The voice went silent and my hovercraft pulled to a stop. I had arrived at work. My enthusiasm had turned into apprehension. How was I going to get through work with a voice in my head? Ugh, what is going on? I turned off my hovercraft and made the ladder descend. Climbing down the ladder, I pushed the thought of the voice from my mind. I mean really, what could such a ridiculous phrase as good morning, my strong hero mean? I shrugged off my moment of craziness as my feet hit the ground. I tugged on the ladder 3 times and the motor went off to pull it back up into the cab. Rubbing my eyes, I glanced at my phone to see that it was 5:45 a.m. I had made pretty good time. I went past the cigarette butts and opened the back door. Daniel was standing just past the door taking off her coat. She smiled at me as I walked in. As I hung up my coat, I almost collapsed with shock as Daniel said, "Good morning, my strong hero." Daniel looked pissed when I lacked a response. After a few moments of confusion, I finally mumbled good morning to her. Seeming pleased, she began to tell me to wake up and not be so sleepy. I shrugged and started my cleanup duties behind the counter. I got the coffees brewing and put the chairs down. The whole time, every time I thought of the voice, I could hear a very quiet giggle. The voice in my own head was laughing at me. It was going to be a long day. Shockingly, the day wasn't so bad. My mind just didn't have time to think about the schizophrenic objections to my sanity. I was much too caught up with the morning coffee rush. It was Friday morning and everyone was needing some caffeine to push on towards the weekend. Citizen after citizen came rushing to the counter and the drive-thru to get their morning fixes. The most common drink was regular drip black coffee, with cream and sugar on request. There was always those people that got the fancy cappuccinos and the supreme double chocolate mint sugar swirl lattes. Couldn't they wait until lunch for those kinds of things? After a stressful 2 hours, it was about 8 a.m. and the corporate work rush was over. We still had a steady pouring in of customers, but nothing like the early morning rush. I had already been through 2 cups of coffee myself. I prefer the dark Colombian coffee and I like it black, at least this early I like it black. In the evening I am known to become more adventurous. Nona calls my evening coffee my unicorn potions to make fun of me. I worked in a coffee shop, so I got bored with regular coffee. It's good to spice things up every once in a while. Work was steady and kept my mind engaged for the remaining 6 hours of my shift. It was now 1:30 p.m. and I would be getting off in 30 minutes. Lexi was showing up at 2 p.m. to relieve me, but she would be there at 2:05 p.m. instead. She was always late and smelling of reefer, but Daniel didn't get mad because she knew I didn't mind. Usually those in power get upset because they think they have to. When their employees are laid back, they become more laid back, or so I guess. Daniel sent me to clean the bathrooms and stock sugars and cream. I agreed and took off to do the work. Daniel and I had a pretty good relationship. She liked me because she knew I would get the job done. I wasn't the most skilled in my customer service skills, being a bit shy, but she didn't hold it against me. She and I had a mutual understanding. She said and I did, simple as that. I did as she asked and she was always pretty understanding about my requests. I suspect she liked me on other levels as well, but I digress. The bathrooms were a mess. No one had cleaned them the night before. I washed, scrubbed, and sprayed away as I counted the minutes to go home. I hoped Nona was still there. It would be nice to see her when I got home. I took my time and my mind began to quiet and the symptoms of stress dissipated. Why do you get stressed over things that aren't even real? My heart rate increased and my palms began to sweat. It was that damn voice again. I thought aloud to it as a strange dialogue was developing. I answered thusly, with annoyance. What are you talking about? Are you talking about yourself, that you're not real? No, silly human. I mean your thoughts. Work itself doesn't stress you out, but the thoughts generated by it. You take these thoughts as reality and thereby become stressed. Why do you punish yourself in this way? I didn't really know that I was doing it. Who else would be doing it? The thing had a point. I mean, some people can be put in the exact same situation as me and not be stressed at all. Others would be tearing their hair out. The voice was right, but how could I apply such esoteric ideas? You want practical advice, so I will give it. Whenever you catch yourself doing this, forcing yourself into stress, follow this method. Awareness is the first step. To be aware makes progress possible. Become aware and then decide not to be affected by your thoughts. In other words, will yourself to be the master of your own being, not the thoughts. I nodded as this made quite a bit of sense to me. My opinion of the voice changed in that moment. Maybe it was there to help me after all, maybe I could trust it. I would test it and see if it's true intention. If I was going to go crazy, then I might as well do it on my own terms. You're not going crazy. This was a great blessing to many prophets of the past. Research the logo of Greece and Aleister Crowley's Holy Guardian Angel. These were glimpses of my role, but no name or word can pin me down in full. I am more than the naming can tame. I am. Okay, all right. It was then that I decided the bathroom was clean enough. I ran into the back room and put up the cleaning supplies. I grabbed a handful of sugar packets and distributed them into their places amongst the tables and islands. On our tables were small white porcelain squares crammed full of sugars and substitutes, 6 of each to be exact. We didn't have salt and peppers, due to us only serving chocolate croissants and cupcakes for food. It was a simple and easy job, but one day I would be off to better things as a yellow at least. You could be more than that. In fact, you will. Really? Oh, yes, but think about it not. Have faith and keep working. Fine. Lexi soon rushed through the door, her shirt untucked and her hair messed up. Daniel told her to tuck in her shirt as I went to clock out. I told Daniel goodbye as she smiled at me and waved. Taking off my apron, I stashed it in my hiding spot in Daniel's tiny office and untucked my shirt. I heaved a sigh of relief and walked out the back door. My day at work was done. It was time to get home. I was hungry. I think it should be clearly iterated about the nature of the voice. It wasn't like hearing a thought, or a phrase that pops into your mind. It was a loud audible voice, like a woman's, only audible to me. I say a voice in the head, because I don't know how else to describe it. All I know is that it is completely and utterly distinguishable from my thoughts and is somehow of more energy. It just feels powerful, if that makes sense. Well, that's the best job I can do of explaining it for now. I climbed back into my hovercraft and took off into the overheads. I tried driving without autopilot, per the voice's advice. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I texted Nona to find that she was still at the apartment. She probably was still sleeping if I had to guess. I pressed on the gas. The prospect of seeing my Nona overweighed my fear of driving in the overheads. A good man will become great if a woman of equal caliber stands by his side. Nona was waiting for me out in the parking lot as I pulled up. Before I could climb down from M hovercraft, she had joined her lips onto mine. After a few moments of greeting, she offered to take me to eat. I wanted to change out of my work clothes, but she protested and I gave in. I jumped from my hovercraft and into hers as we zoomed back into the overheads. I was overly glad that I no longer had to drive. The voice whispered as I stared out the window. "You are much stronger with Nona. She gives you confidence and strength." The voice was right. Before Nona, I had been shy and withdrawn. I realize I am still shy, but not even close to the degree I was before. I had become more ambitious and readily able to act. Procrastination was almost non-existent in my life, beside the phenomenon of sleeping in. Nona did not help with that part at all. If it was before 8 a.m. then Nona was not a part of it. This was an absolute. She was wearing a green t-shirt with the Dreads logo, a punk synth band. Her hair was tied up and she had black jeans on with white athletic shoes. I still had on my black slacks and black button-up, looking like a corporate slave. Nevertheless, Nona told me I looked handsome and grabbed my hand as she zoomed us towards our destination. I hadn't even bothered to ask where we were going. I was content with just about anything except Randall's burger joint. Ugh, Nona had worn me out on that place. Fried onion rings, soggy fries, and burgers were not my idea of date night food. Nona disagreed. The hovercraft came to a stop as we hauled ourselves down the ladder. I put my arm around Nona's waist as we approached the greatest of places. Nona had accomplished an achievement of incredible proportions. She had taken me to my favorite place. We were at the Lost Island Hibachi Grill. It was time for onion volcanoes, stir-fry, and sake bombs. Oh, the joy of life knows no bounds for a couple like Nona and me. A young Asian woman greeted us at the door with a smile. The smile was genuine, not a customer service illusion. She walked us to a stainless steel hibachi grill surrounded by about 10 chairs. A group of sorority girls sat across from us in their Greek hoodies. They were taking sake bombs and the hibachi chef hadn't even arrived yet. Nona and I were definitely going to follow their fine example. I waved for a waitress to come over as our sake was on its way. We declined the prospect of sake bombs, deciding to drink warm sake on its own. The waitress arrived with a ceramic carafe and 2 glasses as the chef showed up just behind her. "How is everybody doing tonight?" A unanimous raise of our drinks followed his politeness. He shook his head and began to start the onion volcano. I had seen it a dozen times before, but I was still impressed. I selected fried rice, calamari, shrimp, and chicken. Nona got noodles and fish. The chef caught an egg in his hat and played wondrous tricks for the half-drunk girls across the table. Nona and I were quite amused. After our 3rd sake carafe, we were extensively amused. Nona's cheeks were red and she kept giggling. Our food was cooked up and we ate a great dinner. After we had vanquished our plates, we sat for a while drinking our sake and talking. I have a new assignment for my Enochian working. What is it? I have to investigate the difference between one person doing ritual and 2 people working together. Most people think that magic is a solo act, but I disagree. I have something to ask you. Yes? Will you be my Enochian partner? Will you help me with my work? Yes, of course I will. Not just because it helps you out, I actually want to do this. So, you liked our last ritual? It didn't freak you out? It's much less stressful than Nyasha meetings, but similar in effect. Yeah, that's no lie. Nyasha meetings are a lot to handle. You're a lot to handle. You seem to be quite good at handling me so far. Take me home, now. Okay. Nona asked for the check and tabbed us out as I chugged down the remainder of our sake. She wasn't as proficient at drinking as I was, so she was slightly tipsier than I was. I had better catch up. I ordered a sake bomb and paid with cash. The sake burned as I chugged it down before running out the door. We clumsily climbed up the ladder and jumped into the cab of her hovercraft. She enabled the intoxicated setting to on. The machine took over control for the remainder of our journey. When you put a hovercraft on intoxicated mode, it automatically locks up all manual controls and goes straight home. After this option was made universal in all hovercrafts, the cases of drunk driving were cut in half. You can even drink in the cab and not get in trouble by the authorities if your intoxicated beacon is illuminated on the dash. We took full advantage of the automated vehicle as we rolled around in the back seat. We had made enough love for the whole night before we had even made it home. The taste of my lady was on my breath, being sweeter than any other taste I can imagine. Upon arrival at home, I carried her all the way up to the apartment. We didn't care what other people thought of our antics. We were, and still are, in love. Love brings people back into the joyous ecstasies of childhood. Isn't the whole point of the mystic art to bring us back into the consciousness we lost as a child, free from the inherited illusions of culture? For the remainder of the night, I chased my Nona through my bedroom. We played in the sheets as drum kick music played in the background. The melodic droning beats and the rhythmic synthesizer was nice to listen to. Nona was having a blast. It was time for some celebration of the flesh, celebration of our Enochian partnership. To hell with the impediments and the shame of sexuality. Let us embrace this blessing in its fullness. Let us love without any inhibitions. Let us love fully. Without holding a drop back, let us drain every ounce of our love into each other's cup. Let the sexual dew of Nona cover every inch of me, yeah, every last inch. Every last inch of myself was given over to my lady. I prostrated myself at the altar of her heart. In simultaneous surrender, she followed my example. The two of us danced in the ecstasies of the spirit that accompany the joys of the flesh. Sex is an act of celebration, devotion, joy, and ecstasy. Any other expression of this joy is a misunderstanding. Human beings are so full of misunderstandings. The voice began to speak as I laid within Nona's arms. The word created a strange nostalgia in me. I repeated them aloud to Nona as we laid there in exhausted ecstasy. Enlightenment is an extended process of unlearning, shedding off the hideous veils of the spirit. Beliefs veil the sanctity of the face of God. Kill belief and birth your own liberty, the liberty of the spirit. I awoke before Nona, obviously. She didn't even stir as I peeled away from her embrace. She had cuddled me all night and it was a sweaty mess. The things we do for love, right? I jumped into the shower, put on some clothes, and brushed my teeth. I pulled my hair into a ponytail and grabbed my Enochian notes. I had an appointment at the Enochian Society today. The proposition for my ritual partner was to be presented today. I was going to leave out the fact that Nona was my girlfriend, in case they decided against it. Nona Lister, a fellow student with mystical potential. That was my pitch, my lame pitch. Ch8, the order. I rushed into the stuffy office building with my notes in hand. I was 2 minutes away from being late. How could I be in charge of the exploration of discarnate intelligences when I couldn't even be on time? I don't know why, but unpunctuality got under my skin. It especially got under my skin when it was my own offense. My shoes squeaked as I made my way across the dull white tiles. The white walls and bright fluorescent lights made it look like a hospital. Looks can be quite deceiving. My boss didn't even notice my lateness, which made me even more agitated. He had forgotten about our meeting entirely and folded to my demands within seconds. I told him about Nona, and before I could explain who she was, he accepted. He told me to do what I saw fit in the project. The only important procedure was the record keeping. All he cared about was that I got the job done and wrote it all down. The details were all up to me. And so begun my investigation into the effects of magic in pairs. A magus and a seer united in one cause, the investigation of discarnate intelligence. My boss, Mike, didn't really care too much, but I did. He was spread across so many different projects that he couldn't really think about any particular one for very long. The company had others like myself investigating different phenomenon. Hallucinogens present a particularly good opportunity for our efforts. I had definitely picked the more difficult path. I shook Mike's hand before leaving his office. He wished me luck, and that was that. As I walked through the office, the voice began to speak once again. Go to the receptionist and give her the number. What number? The one you've been seeing everywhere. Have you been doing that to me? Of course I have, just trust me. I rounded the corner and walked up to the receptionist's office. I was nervous, way more nervous than I should have been. Kelly stood behind the counter with her brown eyes and bright blonde hair. She really was such a nice lady, and I hoped that my request wouldn't make her think I was crazy. I asked for a sticky note and a pen as I scribbled the number 93 onto it. Her eyes got wide as she looked me up and down before saying, I had no idea, Carl. I never thought you would have been chosen. You're so arrogant sometimes, you know that, don't you? Well, the voice never chooses wrong, so what do I know? Meet me at 9 p.m. at this address. Huh? My heart was pounding so loud that I could feel it in my ears. She had said the voice. She knew what I was talking about. I grabbed the piece of paper she had scribbled the address on and ran out the door. It's one thing to hear a voice in your head, but it's another thing for the voice to be right. I revved my hovercraft into gear and zoomed into the overheads. The metallic bodies of the other crafts shimmered in the sunlight. It was an hour from rush hour and I really didn't want to be stuck out during that. During rush hour, everyone's crafts went into immediate autopilot mode with the speed being half reduced. This caused traffic not to back up, but it was really boring. Sitting there in synchronistic masses of hovercrafts was a strange experience. Thousands and thousands of hovercrafts would be shoved into lines that extended on forever. Differing skyways would be set at different altitudes. Your altitude mattered just as much as your speed in the overheads. It was a lot to deal with at first, but I was starting to enjoy it. Downtemp was playing on the radio and I was making good time. I would definitely make it back to the apartment before rush hour. The music was slow and rhythmic, creating a euphoric feeling. I moved back and forth to the beat of the music. There were no words or singing in downtemp. It just didn't need it. It was fine with the beat all on its lonesome. The voice had begun to speak to me through my euphoria. You must tell Nona about me. What if she thinks I'm crazy? She won't, trust me. Why do you keep telling me to trust you? Because you lack trust. I had nothing to say in response. The voice was right, again. I never trusted anyone fully. Not trusting is a type of fear. Fear none, nothing at all. Trust exists in the absence of fear. No one had really called me out like that before. Well, it was time to go tell Nona about my insanity. Perhaps I would be single by the end of the evening, or perhaps not. My hovercraft pulled to a stop at my apartment complex. I jumped down the ladder and ran off towards the house. I wasn't excited, but wanted to burn off some energy and anxiety. The sun was streaming down and my shirt stuck to my body with sweat. The sounds of cars zooming overhead was distant, but still there. I could hear people talking around the corner and enjoying themselves in the sunlight. I walked right to my apartment and swung open the door to find Nona playing around on my laptop. She turned and smiled before going back to whatever was grabbing her attention on the screen. I kissed her cheek before going to the bathroom to change. I ended up jumping in the shower to scrub the nervous anxiety off of me. I struggled with the possible outcomes as anxiety closed in from all sides. The fear of losing Nona, of being all alone, was strong. I was so scared all the time and of so many things. Always jumping at phantoms, my mind was all over the place. The possibilities raced through my mind, most of them negative and terrible. It took an actual focus of will to produce a positive thought about the situation. It was like my mind was poised to point out the negatives. If I had given no resistance, it would have continued to do so, but I pushed the negativity away. I forced in my own plan and laid to rest the trembles of doubt. When the negative thoughts had faded, the voice began to speak as I stood beneath the shower head and the warm water run down my body. The mind casts shadows. You must be the master of all things, but first and foremost, you must master your mind. Keep it in check with your will. You have nothing to fear. Nona is the perfect choice. You have not erred, she is the perfect partner in all matters from Enochian to pleasure. The warm water turned to cold as I quickly washed the soap from my body. I must have stood there for longer than I thought. The water was quickly shut off and I jumped out the shower. The plush yellow towel, per Nona's request, felt soft my skin. I dried myself off, brushed my teeth, and put on some underwear before running to see Nona. I threw on some shorts before going to her. I pulled the headphones off of her ears and kissed her neck as she closed her eyes. I whispered in her ear as she jumped to attention. I have something I have to tell you. Nothing good ever follows those words. This is different. If you break up with me, I will kill you. I have been hearing a voice lately. Like there is a being in my head that tells me things that come true. Terence McKenna talks about the same thing, Carl. It's okay, I'm not going to leave you. How did you know I was scared that you were going to leave me? I just know, but don't worry, Carl. You're too brilliant to be crazy. You're the most brilliant person I've ever met. Thank you for understanding. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand you at all, but I accept you. I love you. I love you too. Do you want to go get some coffee with me? Even when you're not at work, you want to go there. Sure, coffee sounds fine. We'll go to another coffee shop besides my work. Cosmo Cafe sound good? Works for me. Nona pulled me close and looked into my eyes as we shared a long kiss. Her green eyes sparkled beneath the fluorescent lights. She was telling me, without words, that she wasn't going anywhere. I was so relieved. It was hard to be alone, being that she was my only friend. It would be even harder to be someone all alone with a voice in their head. Nona volunteered to drive, thank God. She wasn't being polite, but was terrified of my own driving. We got into her craft and typed in the coordinates for Cosmo Cafe. She followed the navigation screen in front of her as we zoomed into the overheads. She was blaring her thrash swell album as I looked out the window. All of the other hovercrafts zoomed by and the whining of anti-gravity engines filled the air. The engines caused the air to sort of vibrate, or at least that's what it felt like. Now that I was thinking about it, how did hovercraft engines work? I just wasn't sure. Nona and I had drank our coffee and munched on pastries for a few hours. We wandered around the city and went to a bookstore and a few clothing stores. As always, I bought very little while she bought way too much. I was assigned the task of carrying her clothes as she tried them on. What's weird is that I didn't mind at all. We were having a lot of fun. After shopping, the sun went down and we went to a small burger joint. I had a beer and she drank a gin cocktail with lime. A weird drink, but consistently good. Dinner came to a close and it was already 8:15 p.m. I then realized about my secret appointment that evening. I pulled out the crinkled piece of paper with the address written on it as I implored Nona to hurry and drop me off there. I had to explain the weird circumstances and everything, but she didn't seem fazed at all. Why wasn't she surprised about all the Secret of 93 business? She pulled a similar piece of paper from her own pocket as she smirked at me. It had the same address on it. She spoke as my jaw fell in surprise. The girl from the Nyasha meeting gave it to me. It looks like we're both in for a surprise tonight. I was nervous, but know that you're going I feel better. Come on, let's go figure out what this is all about. And so, we paid for dinner and jumped back into the craft. She typed the coordinates in and off we went towards the secret meeting at Zone 3197 Subzone 2C. Street Block 44, Building Number 93. The Scarlet Lounge. Restricted Access Area. Nona parked the hovercraft high above Street Block 44 as we threw the ladder down. As we started to climb down, I realized that we were in the nicest part of our whole zone. This place was called the Heights, a place for the extremely rich. Mostly blacks lived here. I had never even been close to this area. It was sort of a given that if you weren't a black then you stayed away from the mansions and the villas. Nona was equally impressed. She looked at me with wide eyes as I said, "Yeah, I know. We have to at least pretend like we belong though." "Yeah, you're right." We both nodded at each other as our feet hit the ground. All of the buildings around us stretched high into the sky with large glass windows. Whole floors of these skyscraper villas were rented, or bought, by wealthy people. The cost of one floor of the skyscrapers was more than my entire apartment complex combined. Every floor came with a full-time staff of maids and cooks and was furnished by the most celebrated designers of the day. The buildings were all a sleek and shiny silver color, giving the area a modern look. The building we had arrived at was much different than the Sky Villas. It was just a simple building, really fancy building, but a building nonetheless. A large statue of a five-pointed star sat on the top of the roof of the gray building. Red lights were installed at the points that flashed every 3 seconds. We were standing before the Council and Leadership Board building for Zone number 3197. Why were we brought here? I just didn't understand. A woman approached as we stood there in confusion. She was wearing a flowing dress with heels. It seemed that Nona and I were quite underdressed. This woman greeted us with very tight and warm hugs. I was taken aback at first, but then realized it was the blonde-haired woman from the Nyasha meeting. It was Layla. We instantly became relaxed. Nona asked her if we would stick out being so underdressed. Layla said we would be changing before the meeting. What kind of meeting would we be going to? Before we could ask more questions, Layla ushered us into the Zone Rule and Leadership building as she opened the door with a key on her keyring. We followed her inside as the door shut behind us and she locked it. She walked to the elevator at the far wall of the building as I was momentarily distracted by the humongous crystal chandelier that hung in the lobby. Nona shook me out of my trance and the three of us squeezed into the tiny elevator. Layla inserted another key into the emergency keyhole of the elevator computer. A prompt screen popped up and Layla pushed a few buttons until a 6-block space was generated on the screen with a keypad below. She typed 6 numbers as the screen flashed green and the elevator went down. She whispered in a low voice. "The code is 939,393 and we are going to a sub-basement level. Our temple is hidden below the Zone Rule and Leadership Committee building, hidden in plain sight." Dozens of scenarios began to race through my mind as to what might come next. Were these people terrorists? Was it a cult or secret government? Were we about to join the Illuminati? The truth was much bigger than any of these ideas, way bigger. The elevator display buttons lit up as we descended. We had started at the lobby floor and went down to the B1 and to B2. There was no button for any floor below B2, but we kept descending. The B2 button flashed 3 times as if to signify 3 hidden floors before the elevator door opened. We stepped out of the elevator to find ourselves in a small room with a rack of robes on the right side of the wall. The walls and floor were all painted black and candles were placed on small round plates that hung on strings from the ceiling. There was barely any light, just enough to see. Layla motioned for us to follow her as she reached for a robe on the wall and picked it up. The sizes increased from left to right and I moved down some to find a bigger robe. Nona and Layla began to undress and slide into their robes as I followed suit. I wasn't sure if I was to wear nothing under my robe or just my underwear. I followed Layla and Nona's example and kept on just my underwear. The robe was very soft and light, being a light purple color. The robe had a hood that extended further than a regular hood normally does. 2 holes were cut in the forefront of this hood and I realized it was used to cover the face. I threw the hood over my face and situated it so that I could see out of the holes. The hood came to a stop right past the nose so that all I could see of Nona and Layla were their mouths. They stood light purple masses with only the tips of their fingers and their mouths visible. Layla walked through a door with a black curtain across it. I parted the curtain like a veil and stepped into the room beyond. We stood in a large triangular-shaped room. A large orange tapestry was suspended above us with 3 wires extending from the ceiling. The tapestry rested on these wires making the form of a pyramid. The size of the room was unexpected. It was at least the size of half a football field and at least 100 people stood around the perimeter of the space with their backs against the orange tapestry. The floor was orange as well and in the center was a wooden altar with a red book upon it. A spotlight shone down from above to illuminate this book and candles were placed on pedestals in intervals around the room. I counted 22 candles as a voice began to speak. It was hard to tell who was speaking in the grand assembly. From time immemorial, men and women have gathered in our cause. We come to liberate the soul of humanity from its chains of bondage. Regardless of religion, caste, creed, sex, or color, we come to show the way. We stand in the supernal triad, above and beyond the follies of our fellows. We come to save them, to show the way of liberation. Let us begin our meeting and let us live for the all, instead of the I. One of the robed figures approached the center of the room and knelt at the altar. He had a wand in his hand with strange designs etched in its sides. He knelt at the altar for many seconds as the room fell into solemn silence. He then stood up fast and thrust his arms out to his sides as he shouted, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The whole room shouted back the words, "Love is the law, love under will." He then put his wand up towards the sky and vibrated the word Atta. Then brought the wand to his chest and vibrated Iwas. Then to his waist and vibrated Makath. Then to his right shoulder Veh Gebura and at his left Veh Gedula. Clasping his hands over his chest he vibrated Eli Olam Amen. As he did this, a subtle yellow light seemed to trace a cross over his body. At the final words, the cross expanded into a large yellow ball of light. He approached the east and drew a large pentagram as he vibrated Yod He Vau He. Then to the south, he drew a pentagram and vibrated Adonia. In the west, another pentagram and the word Ahi. And finally in the north, a pentagram and the words Atta Jai Berlu Olam Adonai. Every pentagram he drew seemed to flash into being in my mind's eyes. When he vibrated the words, it was like a gust of wind was blowing through the air. It was beautiful. He then returned to the center and spread his arms wide in the form of a cross. He then shouted the words, "Before me Raphael, behind me Gabriel, on my right hand Michael, on my left hand Oriel, for about me flames the pentagram, and in the column stands the six-rayed star." With every vibration of the archangel's name I could see the being appear in my mind. Raphael in a yellow robe with a sword and Gabriel in blue with a chalice. Michael appeared in red with a flaming wand while Oriel appeared in brown with a large pentacle in his outstretched hands. I felt very big, expansive as this banishing was going on. I banished on my own a lot, with LBRP, but in a group it was something else entirely. Lastly, he ended the way he started. He pointed his wand up towards the sky and vibrated the word Atta. Then brought the wand to his chest and vibrated Iwas. Then to his waist and vibrated Makath. Then to his right shoulder Veh Gebura and at his left Veh Gedula. He then clasped his hands over his chest and bellowed Eli Olam Amen as a strange focus came over me. I just felt completely free from thought and in perfect focus. The banishing was done and the meeting was now to begin. Someone spoke aloud as I wondered who was speaking. It was a strange experience, being in a room full of masked individuals. It seemed the only way to put everyone on equal footing was to veil their appearances and identities. Think what it would be like if all of Congress had their identities concealed in their speeches. You would have to vote on their idea in themselves, regardless of what party of group they stand for. Each and every idea would have to stand on its own 2 feet, or fall. We have to do something about this class system. It is dividing instead of unifying. The United Republic of America is not living up to its name. He is right, but how do we accomplish such a large task? Propaganda. Yes, that has worked in the past, but will it work now? It wouldn't hurt to try it. We'll send out messages into the subconscious by use of subliminal messages in films. I have contacts in the industry, consider it done. Wouldn't it be smarter to just dose everybody up with hallucinogens? Leary already did that. Yes, it helped, but we got just as many casualties as we got successes. It's too dangerous. In my opinion, we deal with the threat directly. Let us appeal to the masses directly, by means of a commercial bearing the truth. Truth, yeah right? What will we tell them? That everything they've ever been taught is a lie? You sound more ridiculous than a Buddhist. Hey, let's not get into an argument everyone. Tonight is not really a business meeting anyway. Have you all forgot why we are here? It is time for us to initiate our 2 new members. Step forth, and claim your place amongst our numbers. I looked towards Nona as she shrugged and we stepped forward. I swallowed as my throat swelled up with nervousness. I was terrified. What was about to happen? I just wasn't sure. About the time we stepped forward 2 other masked figures approached each of us and asked us the question. Do you do this of your own free will? Do you place your trust in us? I do. You will now be initiated into the 1st degree of our holy order. A blindfold was placed over my eyes as everything went black. It is unlawful to speak of what followed next. All that I can say is Nona and I became novitiates of the holy order we found ourselves amongst. A new life had begun for each of us, a life of mystery. Ch9, the enemy appears. As we met with our most holy order, so met a most profane assembly. Every force comes into being in the presence of its opposite. If we had joined the holy order that guided humanity towards spiritual liberation, then of course there was an order dedicated to the enslavement of humanity. The Assembly of Corporate Leadership was meeting in Zone 4022 in a similar hiding spot to the orders. Instead of hiding beneath the government building like us, they hid beneath the nation-level run prison of Zone 4022. It was commonly called the Gray Box, being of very practical design. The building stretched for 80 square blocks and housed 8 million inmates from all around the Republic. It was a terrible place full of gang riots, smuggling, and torture. This was the perfect place for the assembly to meet. They did not wear masks at their meetings, but fancy black suits with cigars and glasses of scotch in their hands. They sat at a large mahogany table in the shape of a perfect square. In the center of the table was a large globe that spun due to a silent electric motor dedicated to the purpose. Each of the men and women at the table had a spotlight shining down on them from above. This gave the rest of the room a dark look, leaving only the people in suits shimmering in contrast to the black painted walls and hardwood floors. Servants walked about the room with trays of alcohol, espresso, pastries, and snacks. Everyone was silently getting refreshments and puffing on cigars. A man with a dark complexion, a buzz cut, and broad shoulders with piercing green eyes sat at the head of the large table. A black cloth strange symbols upon it was positioned in front of his seat. This was the leader of the assembly, the Most High Magnate. Everyone called him the Magnate for short, but his real name was Luis de la Cruz. He was a Puerto Rican businessman that had made a fortune in manufacturing and eventually real estate. The Sky Villas had been his idea. Luis de la Cruz was a multimillionaire and the Most High Magnate of the assembly. The order had no sole leader, but a council of secret chiefs. No one was quite sure who the secret chiefs were, if they were even human beings. The assembly meeting began their meeting as a battery of knocks sounded at the head of the table. De la Cruz held his golden mallet firmly in his hand as everyone fell silent. His authoritative voice rang through the room as the servants quickly left the room. Only the members could hear what really went on in the meetings. Tonight we meet once more, my brethren. I declare this assembly open. All that is said from now until the close stays in this room. Our efforts and tactics must remain a secret. It is in darkness that we stay strong and in darkness that we shall remain. The people are weak and senseless. They need leadership. They need us. Leonard, do you have a report for us? Yes, sir, I do. The suppression of psychedelic and hallucinogenic research is running into some problems. Well, no one is believing us anymore. It seems that people no longer take the drug war serious anymore. We have already given in and let marijuana be legalized on a state level, but I'm not sure how much more we can give in without completing admitting defeat. Dr. Rockwell, will you give us your opinion on this matter? Well, I think that Leonard is slightly mistaken about how media programming works. Of course, a lot of people won't believe it. That's not the point. The point is to have just as many sources that fool as those that enlighten. For every video out there that tells about the spiritual enlightenment and intellectual progress achieved by hallucinogens, we need a video about the dangers and possibilities of madness and psychosis. We just need references to point to when people ask questions. It doesn't matter what the public thinks, it matters what we make it look like it thinks. The majority will always give in to fear and just accept what we tell them. Everything is going just fine. The slaves shall serve. My servants shall be few and secret, they shall rule the many and the known. Roland, do you have anything to report about our corporate endorsement programs? There isn't much to report since last meeting. I have gotten bills passed in 14 countries allowing large corporations bigger tax breaks and low interest rates on loans. We are hoping this to be a catalyst for corporate industry. Slowly but surely, we shall choke the mom and pop stores out of existence. You are always dependable, Roland, thank you. It's my pleasure, sir. The assembly meeting had went as planned. De la Cruz was satisfied, but slightly frustrated. It was hard being an ambitious man, everyone else always fell short of your expectations. Everyone except Dalton, that is. De la Cruz had left the meeting and taken his black Mercedes-Benz home. Fernando, his driver, was playing classic rock as he drove his master home. De la Cruz was twiddling his thumbs, unable to sit still. Beside him, in the back seat of the black Mercedes-Benz SUV sat Daryl Trayvon. Daryl wasn't a human being, he was a weapon, an android/human hybrid designed to carry out De la Cruz's orders. De la Cruz had quite enough of people's incompetence, so he built an associate programmed not to fail him. Daryl's true identity was a secret. If the other members of the assembly knew he had the power to create androids, they would never leave him alone about making money off of it. There was more to life than money. Daryl received his orders with excitement. He was to hunt down the young man named Carl Maxell and cause a little chaos. He was going to shake his faith in the order. He accepted his orders as his master's hand slapped him on the back. Daryl had always been De la Cruz's favorite. Humans were so incompetent. At least he had at least one associate that was devoid of error, devoid of soul as well. Work was finally over, thank God. Daniel had worn me out today, but my meditation after work calmed me back down. Regulating my breath always did the trick. Heart rate, breathing, metabolism, mind, and prana are connected. Make your breathing rhythmic and automatically you have less stressful thoughts. This has always amazed me. There are also secret breath rhythms and techniques that cause you to go into trance states. Holy things are always saved for the sincere while slipping through the hands of the profane. I just joined the order and I'm already talking like them, oh no. I threw myself upon my bed as waves of relief crashed over me. It felt so good to be off work and have nothing else to do. The experience with the order had really got me excited. They said I can't talk about the initiation itself, but the book is fair game. The law is for all, they said. The book of the law, Liber Vel Legis, was the code of conduct for the order. It wasn't like a Bible for the priest to interpret but more personal. Each man and woman was free to interpret the book as they saw fit. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. So simple, yet so profound. Ugh, I wasn't even done with the first chapter and I was absolutely enthralled. Nona had been reading hers as well. My phone kept beeping with texts about it. Even when we're apart, we text each other all day. I smiled as thoughts of Nona floated into my mind. Her dark hair and the lines in her thighs. Such a distraction she can be without even being present. It was time to get back to my reading. Make no difference between any one thing and any other thing, for thereby there cometh hurt. This changes everything. Think of the implications this would have on society for the better. I suddenly understood the importance of the order. Silently, I dedicated myself to the service of the order. Their purpose had become my purpose, the initiation of humanity with help from the book of the law. I was taken out of my reveries as someone started banging on my door. The knocking was mechanical and rhythmic. Who could it be? Sadly enough, Nona was my only friend outside of work. I swallowed nervously as I shook myself awake and ran over to the door. I swung it open to reveal a tan man with a perfect physique. Not only was his physique perfect, but every feature seemed tailor-made. His eyes were bright blue and his black hair was cut into a perfect military style. His cheekbones were pronounced and he stood there motionless with complete focus in his yes. I had no idea who this guy was but I was fascinated, not to mention a little nervous too. He extended his hand as I shook it. Daryl Trayvon, it is a pleasure to meet you. I have heard much about you. Your Enochian work is quite impressive. How do you know about that? It's classified, I mean never mind, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyways, my name is Carl Maxell. He had taken me off guard with the Enochian stuff. My heart was racing. Was he going to blow my cover? I loved my job. I bit my lip in nervousness as he just stared at me for a few seconds. What was this guy's angle? Something just didn't feel right. He gave me a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with a golden string. A gold ring was tied to the string along with a note. He shook my hand once more as he said, "The Assembly guides humanity toward prosperity. We offer leadership to those that need it. In other words, we see you as a leader. We extend our hand to you. The decision is yours." My hand ached as I watched him turn and leave. His grip was like a bodybuilder's. Even his steps were mechanical, something wasn't right. I opened the package to find something I hadn't expected. In my hands was another copy of the Book of the Law and a gold signet ring. In shock, the book and ring fell to the floor. What was going on? It wasn't until later that I read the note. Here's what it said. The Assembly. Dear Mr. Maxell, it has come to our attention that you fulfill all necessary requirements for entry into our holy assembly. We lead mankind by the hand towards prosperity and progress on all levels, from the economic and political spheres to the psychological and personal. You may well know that another group exists with similar aims. Don't let their lies fool you. Trust us and watch your dreams come true. An affirmative reply to this letter ensures your immediate advancement to black status. Sincerely yours, Luis de la Cruz. P.S. Discreetly ship your reply to the address given below. Zone 333, Subzone C, Business Number 333. Immediate passage to a black, such an incredulous bribe. They didn't even offer me dinner first, but extended a priceless jewel across the table in exchange for my submission. From the second I saw that weird human being I could tell something was wrong. My intuition told me no in bright red flashing letters and I was listening. Not to mention that de la Cruz was a celebrity billionaire. No thank you, the humble and sublime order was where my loyalty resided. One thing really had me confused. Why had they given me a copy of the Book of the Law? Was it to get a rise out of me and make me distrust the order? I just didn't get that part of the deal. I had been assigned a teacher after my initiation into the order. This person lived in another state and all I knew was their first name. We communicated over the phone and any questions I had were directed to her. I sent her a text telling her what had happened. She didn't even act surprised. She said the assembly always tried to convert their new initiates with bribes and trickery. What really surprised me is that she said the book of the law was not a trick. They really used it as a basis for their actions, just like the order. How can two opposing sides use the same book for the basis of their actions? My teacher said that they applied the book to mundane life, business, and politics, and so it taught them to master those planes of reality. The order caused the initiate to go through training in mysticism and magic to gradually take them towards the perfection of their being. The members of the order had access to higher planes of spiritual experiences that the assembly could not even begin to understand. The book was applicable to any and every scenario of life. The level of attainment in the reader decided its severity of application. She called it non-dual, but I didn't really understand. In other words, the more advanced the reader is, then the more advanced the understanding of the book is. My teacher made me realize just how much work I had left to do. She was so much more advanced than me. It was time to get to work. There was definitely no shortage of work within the order. I was assigned meditations and devotional prayers to do on a daily basis. The prayers shall remain secret, but the meditations are lawful to speak about. Asana and pranayama, these were my main concerns at the moment. Asana is the conquering of the body's influence over the mind. The first obstacle in meditation is the body. The desire to itch, scratch, move, and so on has to be overcome. This is done in a very practical manner. You choose a certain posture you like and stick with it. I was assigned daily 30-minute sessions for asana. Most people misunderstand meditation. They think that asana is the whole of the matter, but this is not so. The ability to sit still for a period of time is a prerequisite for practices that come in the future. It is the foundation for further practice with no particular importance in and of itself. One of these further practices is pranayama. Pranayama is the control of subtle energies by use of the breath. It translates into alternative nostril breathing that is timed. This sounds complicated, but it is not so. Your pointer and middle finger of your right hand rest on your forehead as your thumb rests over your right nostril. Your pinky and ring finger rest over your left nostril. You begin with an in-breath through the left nostril while holding the right nostril closed. Then you switch your hold to the other nostril while breathing out. This creates a rhythmic back and forth of inhaling through one and exhaling through the other. This practice creates astounding results and must be treated with respect. The beginner cycle is 5-second inhale with a 10-second exhale. Once this is comfortable and easy, it may be expanded to 10-second inhale and 20-second exhale. You have to have a timer or watch for this to be done correctly, and your spine must be straight. I displayed a timer on my laptop that I could look at as I did this while sitting on the edge of a chair with my hands on my knees in what is called the God posture. Later my teacher said I would add holds in between the breath called kumbhakas, but I wasn't ready for that quite yet. And so, a few weeks had passed as I learned to master asana and pranayama. A definite change in personality came over me as a result. I was calmer and had more energy and patience. I always recorded my practices. Here is a recording of one profound session. It was a day just like any other. I sat on the edge of a wooden chair in meditation posture. There in my 2-bedroom apartment, I yearned towards what I thought would be enlightenment. I had been sitting there for the last half of an hour expecting something to happen. As usual, nothing did. To be quite honest, the lack of nothing happening was probably what most people strived for. Peace of mind it's called. There I sat on the edge of a wooden chair with my hands on my knees. My mind was focused in and of itself, and no torrents of thought rolled past my awareness. My breath was deep and rhythmic. I was not taken away by daydreams or mental reveries. No memories of the past pulled me to and fro. I was enraptured in the bliss of pure focus, so much so that the worries of life vanished with a flash. As I sat there in focused meditation, some strange phenomenon occurred. I inhaled deeply for 10 long seconds and held the breath in my lungs. My lungs felt as if they would burst and my skin became very warm. A strong metallic taste filled my mouth and my spine snapped erect as my eyes gazed upwards. My entire body seemed to lock into position, becoming severely rigid. My entire being began to vibrate and hum in an erratic fashion, and it felt like someone had plugged me into an electrical outlet. My limbs shook violently but somehow remained in the posture. Wave after wave of the serpent power pulsed through my body as time stopped on a dime. The intensity of this energy cannot be conveyed in words, regular experience is as dirt to such joys of the spirit. In a flash, my consciousness exited the body and I beheld a vision. A blazing orb of white light filled the entirety of my awareness. In that moment, I saw the falseness of my life, the untapped potential of who I could become. I wanted to help others, to show them that life was not full of black shadows and disappointment but of joy. The suffering of the entire world washed over me then, and I sobbed. The tears were not of sadness, but of joy. This joy came from the realization that suffering was merely a point of view, a wrong point of view, an illusion. This bright light pulsed and reverberated as I realized that it was our sun. As I realized this, my consciousness went through another shift. I had become the sun itself, enraptured in the pure bliss of union. Language seems inadequate to describe such things. I snapped out of my trance and collapsed to the floor of my two-bedroom apartment. I just laid on the ground in shock, as my mind reeled over what had just happened to me. It was then that I remembered what all the old yogis of old say. Don't overemphasize cities, magical powers, or mystical experience. Treat them just like everyday experience and they will become like everyday experience. My mind just simply complied with this notion and that was the end of it. I shrugged my shoulders and caught my breath as I let the excitement fall away. This is what the adepts said would happen, didn't they? Wasn't I striving to be one of them? Why should I be surprised? Meditation calms the mind and makes you more focused. Was that really what I wanted though? My mind became like a laser beam that was completely under my control. I had to will it into action or it would just remain still. It took years to achieve this level of mental control, but after having it all I could do was laugh. Everything seemed like one big joke, not in a negative way but in a playful way. I saw everything to its philosophical end and completely forgot about the way in which normal humans saw such things. I had attained to the mystical attainment of the ancient yogis but I remained unsatisfied. Something was missing, but what was it? I just wasn't sure. Ch9, Nona, no. Nona had come over later that evening with a surprise for me. I just wasn't sure what she was so excited to show me, being so busy with my Enochian research. I had compiled a few journals worth of notes and ritual results as I divided them into groups of varying success and importance. Tomorrow I was going to show my boss just how far I had gotten into the Enochian mystery. I knew he wouldn't really care, on a personal level anyway, but I cared. I really cared. Humanity's real hope at evolution lies in the contacting and building relationships between discarnate intelligences and individual people. My mind was still reeling over the details of my Enochian work. Nona sat on the edge of the bed as I scribbled away in my journals. I was trying to find the best way to present the results of my experiments, a way that my boss could even understand immediately. I was only half listening as she talked, but she placed something in my hand that caused my mind to stop on a dime. She had handed me her government issue ID. She had been promoted to the black class. Can you believe it, babe? It's all I've ever wanted. So, I take it you took the assembly's offer? Did they offer you the same thing? Yeah, but I refused. It's just a trick, Nona. No one is going to hand you black status for nothing. Why are you always acting like you're better than me? Why can't you just be happy for me? You took the bait of the Black brothers, Nona. I'm not belittling you, I just think the order is the real deal. The assembly suppresses and limits people, while the order tries to free people. I just don't understand why you would take De La Cruz's offer. You know deep down that the order is the right choice. They both use the same book. How can they both use the book of the law if they aren't both good? Explain that one, you righteous prick. Nona, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I just don't want you to make the wrong choice. And I'm not sure about that book. That part confuses me too. Maybe the book is beyond good and evil? Carl, nothing is beyond good and evil. It's either one or the other. The order is tricking you if you think it otherwise. Nona, don't turn this around on me. It's obvious that you accepted a bribe, can't you see that? It's already over with Carl. It's already done. I mailed a letter to the order this morning stating my resignation. And you know what? I and you are over too, goodbye Carl. Woo, www, AA.3, wait Nona, you can't be serious. Did De La Cruz put you up to this? I've always been out of your league, Carl. You were an orange while I was a yellow, but I dated you anyway. You're a genius, you're brilliant, but you can be such a dick. All you care about is your magic and your nonsensical delusions of helping the world. It's time to grow up. 2 classes below was too much as it was, but being a black now I definitely can't date you. Goodbye, Carl. You should have taken the assembly's deal. Being a black is so much more important than your spiritual nonsense. Your spirits and angels won't help you pay the bills, Carl. Okay, I understand. Goodbye, Nona, and tell De La Cruz I will throttle him for brainwashing you. You're the one who's brainwashed. You always have been. Being a genius doesn't excuse the fact that you are crazy. The door slammed shut as Nona ran out of the room. I was still in shock as I stood there clenching my fists. I just stood there for a very long time. I couldn't even think. Confusion and anger rushed through me. It's hard to admit it, but I fell to my knees. There, groveling on the dirty carpet of my apartment, I cried. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. So much effort, so much trying was put into Nona. Why is it that I am always misunderstood? Why did Nona leave me? Was it De La Cruz that made her do this to shake me up? Was I really just a loser that she had to forget and move on from? The answer to my questions eluded me. The spiritual sky turned black and the thunder of agony sounded in my chest. My body shook and shuddered as my body squeezed every last tear it could from behind my eyes. My breathing was erratic and my nose was running. I really should get a hold of myself. A few miserable and embarrassing minutes passed by as I slowly drifted back toward sanity. I fought to regulate my breathing, fought and failed. I at least got it slowed down a little bit. My heart rate began to calm down and my wheezing subsided. I pulled myself from off the ground and walked over to the bathroom. There I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. My bloodshot eyes stared lucidly into themselves. My legs swayed as a sudden realization rushed over me. I was all alone now, and fully able to devote myself to the cause of the order.